once I got past this thing, it said, well, everybody's saying you're gay. It's like they say anything that doesn't look like them, they say it's gay. So you get over it. And once I got past that and realized that more people was looking for something different. Not everybody wants to copy each other. Some people are wise enough to know that it can either be pretty boring with all of us being a color, blue, or we could enjoy the rainbow that life is. So I started meeting more and more producers and more and more people in music business, and meeting Virgil Sims, the sleeping bags, and sitting in Thommy Mottola office, and like, these things only happen in music. And it didn't happen because I was trying to be blue like the rest of the people in Baltimore. Because I was purple, I'm sitting in front of Thommy Mottola.
Today is Thursday, April 17th, 2025. Who are we speaking with?
Tommy Davis.
How would you compare the Baltimore sound to the Jersey sound? How are they different? How are they similar? What do they mean to you?
Well, if we talk about the modern Jersey sound, okay, Baltimore is a reflection of the older Jersey sound, because that's when Basement Boys and Pope and OG and all of us was idolizing this BLS sound that came from Tony Humphries and the Zans and the clubs up there in East Orange and stuff that was doing this Boy Jarvis bass kind of heavy music while everybody else was doing Girls Want to Have Fun and all that kind of stuff. We was going up to hear, Celebrate and Reach and things like that. These weren't commercial records, and they was meant for a specific population. So you always gonna hear remnants of that in our music, because it was catchy and it was uplifting and it was happy. So we share that in history. But as people got older and some older ones moved on to other things, we kind of matured in sound in both cities. So in both cities, the old original definition of house has changed. So now it's more neo soul. You know what I mean? It's more grown and sexy. You know what I mean? So it's not so jacking and I'm gonna dance until my hip hurt the next day. No, it's more of a shuffle now. If for the majority of the population that like house for where it came from, we share that. So if I'm in Jersey and I hear the music, and I'm in Baltimore and the bigger clubs that has a following, they share the same music, the same vibe. You know what I mean? The same vibe is there. A maturity to house. You know what I mean? That we all share, and I've probably shared in other cities at the same time, because the demographics for house, it's now still a mature thing. I mean, the young people just didn't adapt to it. They didn't adapt as easy as they did to Big Fun and 10 City and Crystal Waters and, and Joe Vaughn and Curry Chandler. Now we got a little bit more swingy, kind of mature. That's the best way to say it. A mature thing where people enjoy a more, not a hyper dance. It's not as hyper as it was in years ago. Baltimore still has hyper venues that's different than Jersey. We still have a love for hyper. So you got DJs like me, Spen, Charisma, and likes that are very hyper, which, which Jersey has a few, but it's not their thing. Their thing is their superheroes. And they have some nice superheroes in Jersey that has taken this sound and gave Jersey a modern sound. So, and they are friends of us in Baltimore. So we share that, together. It might have saved house. I mean, had house stayed on the same path it was on and people aged out, it would have died. They can't keep jumping. They can't keep jacking their body at 50. They needed more substance. They needed more things that makes it easy for new people to come in. You know what I mean? And say, hey, I didn't like that. It was just redundant. Now they coming in singing along with the music. And Jersey has a great audience that loves to sing with the music. And Baltimore simultaneously does too.
To a Baltimorean, what is house music today?
Baltimore is a little city that against all odds did a lot of stuff. So Baltimore is going through what the country is going through. We've been going through it for a long time. It's a southern city that's on the Mason Dixon line. So the achievements we do as if, and I'm speaking as African Americans, there's always obstacles that's going on. I mean, our history goes back to Pennsylvania Avenue, the Royal Theater, James Brown, Billie Holiday, Slappy White, Red Fox, and all this kind of stuff. That these paradigms of excellence are gone, and it wasn't because they left; it's because they was exiled by powers that be. So here comes these kids with house, and we are the offspring of that. So we are rebellious. You know what I mean? We were like, I know you want to hoard us all into your cabana bars and let us listen to Bruce Springsteen and all that kind of stuff, but we still have an identity. So Baltimore has really clapped down on it really hard. You know what I mean? We have youth that are mad and angry, like any in city, and they have their own genre, and the powers that be like to lump it all together and just say black people as a whole. They do not divide us in, well, you have mature ones, you have this, and you know what I mean, and so that it's hard for us to do things in here as a prophet. Music is a prophet. I mean, yes, there's a culture, yes, there's all that kind of stuff, but it's a profit. If a club can't open up, be safe, and not violate the zoning things that goes along with the powers that be, the people that don't dance, then it's hard for them to flourish. So we have lost most of the nightclub based clubs here. So what it has done is made it go underground into restaurants and one event things. You know what I mean? Like, there'll be one event here, one event there, one thing, because they won't stop. So the Baltimore sound now is a little bit more sweeter because now it's not a club that's open every week. You know what I mean? We had clubs that used to be open every week. Now we have to follow to where this party's gonna be here, this party's gonna be there, and it just makes it taste a little bit sweeter because of the absence of what used to be a heyday when we had strips that had 4 clubs on it, and where you could go to several. But now, as far as house, you don't have that. The new demographics is the Gen X and millennials who really didn't adapt house. They didn't adapt it. They had their own thing. And to them, house was what their fathers and mothers used to do, and they reluctantly don't want to do it. So therefore, yeah, in Baltimore, it's a sweet and sour at the same time, because those people that want it don't know how to do it because the clubs are not there. Like if you was in New York, there's no, the garage is gone. Bonds is gone. I mean, Nickel Bar is gone. The Loft is gone. So all the things that somebody my age who actually was in the beginning of house and disco, they don't have that background. So you have a generation only knowing what crossed over into pop. So when they say they don't like house, they just saying I don't like the pop records I hear over and over again because they never get the true picture anymore. You'd have to have the culture, the club, what I mean, the whole thing to get what we got 40 years ago. So, I watch our youth and they don't even dance anymore. They just kind of stand there with phones in their hands. And it's kind of sad because that means the generation I come from are the last ones that actually dance with people. You know what I mean? We don't stand on a dance floor. Matter of fact, if you stood on a dance floor in the way of a dancer, they would push you out the way. It was about the dance. And somehow the rhythm is gone with the other generations. They are more social media, more look at me, where my generation before had look at me, but look at me dance. Yeah, so it's like I said, it's sweet and sour.
Sweet and sour sauce with an egg roll on the side.
Yeah, and half and half.
Half a half. Um, let's talk about house music in Baltimore back in the day.
Oof.
What were the outstanding Baltimore dance labels, record stores, and record pools? Give us an education.
Okay, so early house record pools record pools used to be the way a DJ got music. So that is promoted by major labels and labels that could afford to service record pools. We had like 3 or 4 here, and a DJ was very much connected to a record pool. But mom and pop record stores were still around. So whenever new undergrounds came in, you had this. You could have every bit of 7 or 8 stores you could go to and find independent music. You know what I mean? Music that wasn't in a record pool, music that could be from another city, another country, you know what I mean? And that thing is what really helped house and uh, Latin freestyle and Miami bass and hip hop grow because record pools only service the major labels. So you might could get Run DMC, but you're not getting Wild Pitch with DJ Premier. You know what I mean? You're not getting these things that you had to go to a mom and pop store that aimed at that. Record pools only did it by what was Billboard reports and stuff like that. That's where music first was originated. That's how you got your source, was to be a Billboard reporter and be in a record pool. And you would get 100 records a week. 75% was trash that you would never play, but it was the only way you could get a vast amount of music. So in Baltimore, I'm part of the reason is that the idea of a DJ in a record store that hung in the clubs. So that means you could come into a record store that where I got really, really known for and sing a couple lyrics to the song. So you would come in and say, well, it's this record that says sex on the beach. And I said, oh, you talking about drink on me? Like, yeah, that's it. And that was my forte. Why? Because I hung in the clubs. And in the daytime, you come in and just, if you didn't do that, you come in and say, give me what's hot right now. Maybe you haven't been out. Maybe you was in the military. And you just say, just catch me up. And these mom and pop stores, in order to survive, had those things in it. So they had to hire guys like me to come in and say, "Hey, I'm a provider service." We still had the Sam Goodies and the chain stores in malls and stuff like that, where you could go in and still get Elton John and Coltrane, Coltrane and stuff. But a mom and pop store aimed at this new underground thing that look for the people that's looking for rare commodities, things that were happening in other places that wasn't on Billboard and that kind of thing. So we watched that switch. To be honest, this what happened. Bands used to be the end thing in Baltimore. So we have some legendary bands that came here. You know what I mean? From to the Royal Theater and to a whole bunch of clubs up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. So bands were the form of entertainment. So you would go when you went out. The idea of going out is to hear a really great band, and in a cabaret setting, and that was your idea of a good time. You dress up, you go out, and just stuff like this. Well, when vinyl and early soul funk came in, the bands kind of dwindled off into and when this new era came, when people was looking for this new vehicle, which was vinyl and the introduction to the DJ, who used to be a guy on a card table in the back just playing records as they want worn it off. And all of a sudden, this whole idea of a celebrity person became popular, much to the dismay of people that were bands, because back 40, 50 years ago, you went to school, you learned how to play the trumpet so that you could play in a band and be the hippest guy in the world because you're playing around with this band that doing every prom, wedding, you know what I mean? It was a really strong positive vehicle, and we created some really big name people with talent. But all of a sudden, when the education system and all these things that used to enhance band, you know what I mean, it used to be a major thing, started cutting these programs out, there had to be another way to figure out how to entertain. And so vinyl and 8 tracks, and believe it or not, 8 tracks, vinyl, and then eventually CDs came in and became the way that people all started expressing music. You still had bands, but not as many. There used to be bands everywhere. If you went to somebody's birthday party, they had a band, that would play the cover tunes and their own stuff. So that changed the whole scene. And so record stores, mom and pop record stores, that's what they're called. They could be owned by, the Hebrews. It could be owned by another African American that was invested in it. But these things took over, and so no longer did you had to go. I don't know where you had to go because there wasn't online. There was none of that stuff there. So you had to be able to walk in the store and trust the salesman to know exactly what you're looking for. So, and this happened before disco. This is slave, brass construction, B-side of James Brown's records and stuff like that, that you had to go to a mom and pop store. You go into a corporate store, they don't know what you're talking about. They're not going to know how to get the Manhattans or the dramatics or stuff like that. So the salesman became the guy, the buyer. It's like, you know what, I'm going to service the community. So that just started the whole thing. And so that changed that over the years, that became the vehicle. Now, unfortunately, that also we watched the demise of it. So now you don't have mom and pop stores anymore. All of a sudden, something new and fantastic came. It was called the internet and online shopping. So people said, well, why do I have to go to the store when I could just go on the net and listen to it? And unfortunately, it killed not only just the bands, it killed also the independent mom and pop store. No longer did you have the record player and all that kind of stuff. Um, Surprisingly, if you ask a millennium about a record player, they don't know what that is. They never even seen one. It's like, you know what? We used to buy records. I used to take my lunch money just to go buy records, to go because it was important. When you went to a party, it was about the records. You went to a basement party, there wasn't a band. It was just you and the records. So, and it wasn't about dance. It was about music. You know what I mean? As a culture, we developed this sound that we only could get by supporting each other. Mom and pop stores did that. So you could go into mom and pop stores and find Muddy Waters, Jimi Hendrix, or things that wasn't mass marketed to everyone. And that taste, and especially in gospel, the underground independent gospel companies, churches and stuff like that did these great guys from Edwin Harkins all the way down to the Five Blind Boys. You only could get in a mom and pop store. So so we watched that come, and we've sadly watched that go. I think I was one of the last ones holding on to it with disco and house because I was the buyer. So I would spend half my day on the phone trying to find these records that an average Baltimorean didn't know where it came from or how to get it, but they knew they would come to me for it. So early records and club and dance like Follow Me and all that kind of stuff you couldn't find anywhere else. You had to go to a mama pop store and say, "What's this record saying? Follow Me." I had it. You know what I mean? I had it, or watched it, or set it off, or Planet Rock, or jam on my big guitar, or or Rapture, or Blondie. Anything. These records were hard to find, and having your finger on the pulse was all because of the mom and pop stores had to do that to survive. A great loss. A great loss.
Let's talk about Baltimore today.
Mm.
Specifically, what are the happening spots right now? What is their shelf life? How long is a party hot? Is it 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? And why is their shelf life short or long? And then are there any DJ residences that people should know about? So like paint the picture. Say my friend is coming over from Germany and is coming to Baltimore for 10 days and wants to go out.
Mm.
Paint the picture of like what's happening right now in Baltimore in terms of the house music scene.
In terms of house, um, very little. If he came and he came on the wrong weekend, it's like, dude, if he was here next week, Mark Francis will be here, and but you came on this weekend. So, like I said earlier, it became now about not the space, but the personality, the DJ. You know what I mean? So, unfortunately, to bring somebody from California or New York with their schedule, it can't be every week. So you come in Baltimore on one week, it's 4 parties going on, and they're all held in either a hall or a restaurant, a big restaurant that moves the tables out the way, or a birthday celebration. You know what I mean? Somebody said, hey, I rented this place for my birthday and I got Timmy Regisford. Or those kind of parties. Or like Alternate that has a residency now that, prides herself on bringing her friends, which now are international. So she knows everybody. She knows David Morales. She knows Tommy Davis. She knows Spen. She knows, Quentin Harris. She knows everyone. So she can bring them in to bring a sound that the newcomers don't know. They might not understand the name, but they trust her. You know what I mean? So that's what you see now. So now people, when they go out, they look for who is giving the party because you have to trust the person. You know what I mean? I'll give you your money because I know you. Even if I don't know it, it's somebody that I should know. So a person could go out to a deep sugar party and hear someone like uh, a Terry Hunter, but to an average Baltimorean that just likes to go to parties, they don't know who Terry is yet. And these parties strategically help build up the people to say, okay, it's not the DJ, it's the party. So I follow the party. You know what I mean? Which now is not brick and mortar. You know what I mean? So you can follow the person. You could say, hey, I like the sound that Thommy played. So where is he playing next? And just follow me because I'm gonna make the decision to do that party that you want to get to. So I'm going to be next to some other people that's going to give you what you need without you having to be a researcher to know what it is. So it has gotten over time. It's kind of divided up a little bit because I'm an OG, and I'm saying it in a time perspective. So I still play in the original way, and put me with Timmy or David or Spen or whatever. The party now has become a hodgepodge of DJs on at one party. You know what I mean? Where back in the day it was one DJ all night. It's no longer that anymore. Now, in order to diversify and also keep the numbers you need to have a party going in, you have to put 4 DJs on because you take the audience for all 4 and you make a great party. But that's where it's come down to. And it's not something to be proud about, but like any kind of thing that's popular, we watched it happen with doo-wop. We watched it working with bands. We watched it working with show live performances on, concerts. Eventually, each time, back in the heyday, it was nothing to have 2,000 people in a house party. Now you're happy with 200 because, things move on. And so if you want to see more than 200, you would have to take the likes of Timmy Regisford, Mike Dunn, and Charisma, which all could play internationally around the world, and put them on one bill to get the people that do not know just want to be a part of something to come out. And that's where Baltimore is right now. It's like it's about who to follow. So me as an individual, I have to keep reinventing. I have to keep figuring out how do I keep new people in? You know what I mean? How do I not make it sound stagnant? You know what I mean? Like I've been doing this for 50 years. So I keep changing it. I keep thinking of ways to do it. And every other DJ is doing it. It's like, you know what? Sometimes it's the venue. Like it's a really nice spot. And it's got a nice sound system. Some people it's about the clique. You know what I mean? This clique always got the fat honeys. Guess what? That's gonna be the party you want to go to. It could be the alcohol. Yeah, the drinks are real cheap, but I can afford it. You know what I mean? And we can get wasted. It depends who you're talking to. But it used to be, we would, back in the day, we would go to a club not expecting anything. Just trust that this club is the joint and go in there and not know a song that they played. But we wasn't opinionated back then. It was something new. You know what I mean? Besides, your alternative back then was to go to a party that would play a combination of early rap, because that's what it was called in the beginning, rap, Chuck Brown, Go Go, um, one or two considered house or not house, club records. We didn't call it house then. To have those things to go, and it was a hodgepodge in a night, including line dancing and reggae music. It wasn't until the advent of house that people said, I want to just hear that. I want to go to a club that played nothing but that. And in the beginning, they were everywhere as a trend. And then, the real house hits stayed on. The trend people fell off. So now you have just a purist. It's a purist thing. If you really love this music, you'll track it down. You also your friends are fellow house heads. So between y'all and the internet, you decide. You know, back in the day, it was nothing for us to drive to New Jersey for a party. So it's like that now. People will go to New Jersey or go to New York or go the other way, go to Atlanta. It's like that because that's how it is. That's what it is now. So the house scene has watched this become such a specified particular thing that you have to really be on your toes to where to go. You have to pay attention to the promoter. Who's doing it? Well, this promoter, whenever he throw a party, he don't care. And I'll give my money and it'd be just horrible. And so people have to be a little bit more attentive. They're like, okay, you know what? Well, Ultra is great. Her parties, even if the party I didn't like it everybody else is, it might not be my taste. But everybody wants to walk into something that's live for its rocking, which is a lost art. Unfortunately, it's a lost art. Now people want to sing the first 2 minutes of a hip hop, not a hip hop, a record they know, and then they stop dancing and they back with their phone, blowing kisses at themselves. That's where we are now in Baltimore and everywhere else I go, except for the the white clubs. The white clubs don't do a lot of that. They actually remind me of the energy we used to have. Even in EDM, I don't see them holding the phones a lot. You know what I mean? They have the energy we used to have in house. Now the energy in house is clicky, and it's kind of like I don't know you. You're not part of this. What are you here? I've never seen you before, except for the commonality that any music has. It's a sexual thing. I go out because I want to meet my perfect person for the night. That has been the basis of all music and will always be.
So well said. Um, let's go back to music origins. Explain to people what club music is, how that differs from house music, and then talk to us about the transition when the sound changed from club to house. Break that down for people.
Okay, and I can't help but sound like a person speaking tech languages that they might not know if you're listening. I apologize for that, but the only way I can do it and make you understand is that club music has been around since the 70s. Since the 70s, you had specific people that like to dance to records that were just meant to dance to. That not like it is now where everything is boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants and boots and pants. We would dance to records slow as heartbeat, you know what I mean? to records as fast as Loving Is Really My Game. It's really fast. It wasn't about tempo. It was about song. It was about not hearing when your whole life is great, you grew up listening to the Four Tops and Gladys Knight and those things. You go to a club and you don't hear none of that. You're hearing this sound, this kind of music, and we used to call it club music. So we would go out and we would hear records like Gwen Guthrie or Grace Jones. It was like, what is this sound? What is this music? So people started on the outside calling it club music. It's like, saying, hey, y'all like that club music. And they meant it in a kind of to actually demeaning kind of way. But, we was like, yeah, this sound is what we like. I mean, we went through changes with the sound. So this is pre-house. So we would go to clubs and they would play Slave, Watching You. And this is before the radio would get it. And these clubs would play these records and we started celebrating these records. And the next thing you know, later on they hit the radio. So this club music was pervasive enough to change the radio. You know what I mean? Where they had to adapt because we was playing The Boss by Diana Ross, where they were still playing whatever the label was playing. We're playing The Boss. So now all of a sudden the radio said, "Well, why are they calling or requesting for this record?" And it had no kind of corporate knowledge to it. I mean, to be honest, the business is run by corporations, big companies. Big companies figure out how to mass market across the United States and including globally. So they try to put their finger on the pulse of what's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, they're going to shove it down your throat. So you ain't got no choice. Well, with that kind of control, they only can do so much. So the clubs will come along and say, "Hey, it's this record says on the left, on the right, I suggest," and all of a sudden this record becomes a phenomenal big record, and it would piss off major labels. It's like, oh man, what? Well, we want them to play the system, but they are on the left, and I suggest, or Vaughn Mason, I'm jamming my big guitar, or Break for Love, or these were records not controlled by the majors. So unfortunately, the majors kept pummeling at the radio. So the radio was not a vehicle for club music. It didn't. We didn't care whether the radio heard it. Matter of fact, you was always 2 years behind us. So by the time we listened to a record that all this had was release yourself. By the time you got to it, was 2 years later, and we didn't want to hear it on the radio. Then it's like, man, that's old. And this club sound became really, really big, really, really big. And it wasn't just in black music; it was in all music. You know what I mean? It was in all the way across the board. There's nothing for the underground to play a record called E2E4, which was a German record that all it did is play synthesizers for 21 minutes. Which radio was like, why do y'all like this record? There's no 3-minute version. They're like, well, that's the reason why we like it. We could, in the right setting, this record would take us on places that radio could never do. The records like Martin Circus and records that was this new thing with this new bass sound. So we watched this change happen when the master of records changed. So all of a sudden, records like Any Love and The Boss didn't sound as good as a 12-inch. So this new thing came out with a 12-inch. And the 12-inch gave you this enhanced bass sound so that you didn't have to go to the club. Your bedroom sounded like you was in a club when you played this version, which started from Rapper's Delight and Chic Good Times and Freak and these records, thanks to the Sheik brothers, Bernard and them, they had this amplified bass sound that introduced people to amplified sound, where before things were being mastered without that. So it made a difference. So when you went to the club, you didn't hear a lot of records that didn't have that. Because people came out for this new amplified sound and I was early producing, and I had to fight with the labels and say, you can't change this. This is what, and they said, but that's incorrect. It's wrong. And we would say, no, it's wrong for you, but it's right for us. So, and now it's standard. But if 30 years ago, we had to fight for it. When we did Crystal Waters, we had to fight. Like, you know what? It's got too much bass in it. It's like, no, that's exactly the point. That it needs to bounce. So these things changed what the club was. So besides Richard Long sound systems, if you was lucky enough to live in an area that had one, or one that sounded like one, you had these records that were recorded just for that. I mean, we would go to the club and listen to what you gonna do when you get out of jail? I'm gonna have some fun. And we would go crazy because this record was mastered with this hard bass, this incredible sound. So this is what we call club. When you went to a club thing, you didn't hear anything. You might hear some freestyle, I mean, just some freestyle stuff like Cover Girls and some Florida stuff, like Luke Skywalker or something like that, because back then music was so broad. So club wasn't limited to one kind of sound like it is now. You go to a house party, they kind of limit themselves. We don't play outside of this box. But back then, club music wasn't a box. So, it'd be nothing for in club, you go out and hear Don't Make Me Wait a cappella that was 4 minutes long and dance. You didn't need to be. The idea of it just was new. And it was like, wow, I know how this record sounds. And it gave a chance for people to outstretch their mind and they could actually express themselves out of something that's new and it's different. It's nothing like to listening to that. I remember when Peach Boys came out, it was the strangest record for people because it wasn't driven on a 4/4. You know what I mean? When I say 4/4, disco. So Larry was this guy coming up with a, a rap music that wasn't driven on the four. It was driven on the soul of it. You know what I mean? On the message, on synthesizers. And synthesizers changed everything. You know what I mean? Before then, one of the first groups that did it was like a Kraftwerk and and then later Art of Noise, where people was like, wait a minute, we don't have to have we love good times, boom, 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 boom. We love that. But we like this too. This is weird. This is a record that's just going bubble up, bubble up, up. And that was pre-house. So that kind of helped the people open their mind and say, okay, this is club music. And then it wasn't until Chicago started coming out that we gave it a appropriate name for a newer sound. It was all Linn drums and 808s and and less live musicians in its introduction. So if it wasn't for the open mindedness of club music, we could have never went to house. With the great people like Timmy and what's his name, my boys playing at the loft that would play this fast music. Like, what is this? If you weren't a loft member, you walked in there, you was in a utopia of songs that you didn't know what they was, and you stand around people, and these people are are just going crazy, and your mind capacity of what you thought was in was exploding, and that club gave you that. So when synthesizers came in and groups like the System and Boy Jarvis and the bass and the super bass like in Visual, the music got me, and simple records that combine the freestyle of the freestyle sound along with the soulful sound like All in All and Show Me, and so we realized that it's more technical now. We don't. It's not so soulful, but it sounds good, and it fed the nature of club people that like club music, which is to expand, not to be limited like it is now. It's kind of limited now. When you go out, people stand there actually waiting for something they know. We never went to the club expecting nothing we know. We came in there to like, yo, turn me out with something new because it was all new. Now you have a bunch of people that think they're experts that are dancers. Like, yeah, that's not good. I don't like that. I'm not dancing to it. It never was like that with club music. We would wait, just you know what, I don't like that record. I'll wait 3.5 minutes and it'll change to another record. And I'm okay with that. I'm in a place to be. So I've tried to go through a whole thing. There was a lot of things that happened, that made the sound keep changing. And house was the biggest because it it was the bastard of disco. And the whole disco sucks thing tried to damage, that. You know what I mean? The whole world was dancing with disco. And those people that didn't dance or that was for me that wanted to stay with the Beatles and the Motown sound, and like they hated that. It's like, you know what? No, 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 no. Y'all can't do that. You don't have none of the elements. Where is the jazziness of, where is the things that we built? I mean, really valid stuff, but the people ear wanted more. And so when the club sound switched over to house, it was easy. It didn't switch over because we still play club records today, but they call it all house now. But if you're listening to this, you go to a party, they put on a club record, even though everybody else is calling it a house, you know that this record was Colonel Raven's Music is the answer. You know what I mean? It's like pre-house. It was just hypnotic. Arthur Baker, if they put on Freeze, AEIOU, or New Shoes, um, just these records were just unique with great people like John Morales, Shep Pettibone, Vince Montana, and these. So we at the club people, we started knowing that we had heroes. We had heroes that just did this sound so eloquently. You know, that like we could just follow them by name, and they always you would go in any city you want to, like find that club, and you found that sound. Now, house is different. Houses, you can go to one house club and love it and go to the next house club and don't love it so much. You know what I mean? Because it is so encompassing of everything that you could step out of your comfort zone. You could go to one club and say, I like houses, but I don't like that kind of house. And that's where we are today, with people being critical about what they hear. So I hope I covered that whole movement. It's been an interesting 40 years to go through it and watch. Me, Jay, and Teddy with Basin Boys, we were just imitating Tony Humphries and the Zanzibar sound. And we was just doing it in the basement, never thinking we was ever going to put this out. And just happened to be on the cusp of it. You know what I mean? Where everybody says, yes, more of this. And we just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And unfortunately, that trend, and with my fellow comrades like Inner City, 10 City, and uh, other ones that did major, Soul to Soul, with new sounds that the major labels adapted to, was lucky to ride that wave. But when they was finished with us, they threw us in the trash. All of us. They just abandoned us. You know what I mean? They only ride it for money. They don't ride it for respect to the art at all. So now A&R people don't even have their ear to the ground. They're only going to go to whatever's going to sell the most. So that's where we are now. So your real house heads are going to go follow the independent. You're going to have to be at the place to listen to the music you want to. Where before we all was on one accord with this sound called club music. You could go hear any DJ, long as they was playing that, we was happy. Not so much now.
I want to touch on something you just brought up. You said that when you were the Basement Boys, You
Hmm.
you are emulating the Zanzibar sound.
Yes.
What is the explain to people what is the Zanzibar sound?
It is a bass driven thing. One of the things that I personally can say from the Basement Boys is the king of it is Boy Jarvis. You know what I mean? He took this bass sound that when Tony played it, and so if you've never been to this club, the Lincoln Motel, he had what's called he explained to me once, a diagonal sound system. So you got four corners, and he could switch the sound to go from one corner to the other, which would make this big sound just spin your head like you was in space. So he could play these records and make even an album version of a record sound incredible. It was Richard Long, of course, but he made it sound incredible. So what we wanted to do is make records that sounded like that sound. So, trial and error helped us to figure out how to do it at least in a comfortable way we could do it. So, this sound was sometimes simple, like It's Over Now with alternate tape. Simple. It had a lot of attitude and it had a message, but it had the bass on it so that you could dum 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 dum. You know what I mean? That's all it. That was the basic of the bass through the whole thing, and the advent of chords, in club and house, there was this thing we did, wop, 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 with chords, which honestly, we never heard nobody else do except for in the Zans. Because Tony would pick old records that had it, from Love is the Message to new records that had it. And he would bring new producers that did it. So we went and did this thing, and the first thing we did is take it to Tony. I said, Tony, listen to this. And he played it, and the people went crazy. And don't forget, this is a period when people wasn't judgmental about, I only want to hear what I like. So he could introduce something, and just the fact that he played it, and he had such an ear for understanding where the music was at the moment. And he was also on BLS. So we started running up there a lot and saying, here's alternate tape, here's Crystal Waters, here's Mass Water, here's Sublevel, here's 33rd and the Queen, here's Tonight, here's, what I mean? We just kept going. And he, like a good friend and like a music connoisseur, said he would just say, y'all got this Baltimore sound. And not realizing that we're trying to do your sound, but we can't. But we can't help it but do it in a Baltimore way because we're not trained musicians. We're doing it with sparse material in the basement. But he was like, well, y'all don't know it. And then he said this early on. He said, y'all got a sound that is going to be, is the joint. And we would take him reel to reels, unfinished stuff. And he would just play them. And we would stand there with our mouths open and saying, we did that. And watching people go crazy to it. And all we was doing is being a, a, a residual of a sound that we just wanted to do. We had some other influences like Italian house music at the time that for us in Baltimore, because the record stores, the mom and pop record stores again, we we was imitating those sounds too. You know what I mean? Some records that were synthesizer masterpieces. So and we didn't want the band sound. Excuse me, the guitar band sound, you know what I mean? We wanted to sound mechanical, you know what I mean? Sound like, this is it. This is the sound. And Tony did it. So we related to Jersey, very much so. It's like we wouldn't have been Basin Boys without Jersey. The Jersey was where we felt at home, and in Baltimore, where this guy named Wayne would go to the garage a lot and listen to everything Larry played and would expose us to it. So we had a lot of elements, but our favorite thing was the Tony Humphrey sound because that club, I'll never be in a club like that and watch this modern sound he did. And he would do it with not just us, he would do it with other groups. If he played Promised Land or if he played the Clark Sisters or something, you know what I mean? If you listen to all these records, they have the same common denominator. A, they soulful. A, they kind of tell a story that you can relate to, and that was just it for us. It's like before that, we didn't have anything like that. So your question was in Basement Boys following a trend and realizing once he kept explaining to us that, look, you guys got a sound that is original, and we just kept on it. And from one record to another, we started trusting our instinct. And me and Teddy worked in record stores. So that instinct is also being on the pulse of what people are asking for, at the same time knowing what we want to dance to. So yeah. So I wouldn't say the Baltimore sound is true. It's just contrived out of Baltimore. No, it's contrived out of many places, from New York to New Jersey to Baltimore.
Let's go back to Baltimore. How has the torch been passed in Baltimore clubland from one generation of dancers to another?
Dancers, dancers. Originally, I was a dancer, so I couldn't get enough of it. I was 17, and I was like, I like this sound. This guy Wayne, I would go to this club, and he would play these records that I never heard anywhere else. And in order to get in, as much as I went to at 17, I like to dance. So I would join in dance contests and stuff like that. Eventually, I joined the club's dance troupe, and just doing the hustle. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but hand dancing was from the past before. So the art of dancing, holding someone's hand, was something that easy for me to walk into. It's no longer done as much anymore, but so I just went and just started doing it. So as a dancer, I realized that it was the sound that made me want to do that. So when Basement Boys and when Baltimore became this dancing place where we had shows called Move Man Connection, which is a ripoff of Soul Train, where you had 17-year-olds in silk shirts and hard shoes and pants, emulating what Soul Train and other things. And then that led to another one. So we watched dancing become a real popular thing before, as far as this different kind of dance. We didn't dance like everyone else. So when the freak came in, which was a forbidden dance at first. It's like I remember my parents said, "I know you better not be out there doing the freak," because it was the first time we could touch each other. So you know what I mean. So we could, dancing used to be a little bit space in between you, and the freak came in, and we was up all on the girls, and vice versa. And all of a sudden, there was a new thing. It's like, wait a minute, this is a different kind of dance, but I like it. You know what I mean? You didn't have to know the person. You're nothing. You know what I mean? It was still a dance. So that dance thing helped house come in. When house music came in, and we backed off of the freak, because the freak was a trend. It was a way to do something our parents didn't do. Our parents did not touch each other like that. And we was really into it. And believe it or not, back then the fastest record that we could freak to was 112 beats per minute. For those people that don't know what I'm saying, it was almost equal to what a rap record is right now. A trap record that's the original club music tempo. Was that. And with that, you can be a little bit more, you can get more dancing, you can be more expressive, you can do more things. So the dance people just started going from one club to another. And with house, so what made it different is that once the dance contest, a lot of people don't know this, but dance contest was popular. You'd be in a club and they might stop the music, say, cut the lights on, and say, all right, we're going to have a dance contest. And a guy like me and my friends, we practice all week long just to come out and do these dances. You know what I mean? For the honeys and for the connection, like of feeling like, hey, I'm Mr. It in my culture, which was an underground scene. So still to this day, that still is controlled. It's still about the dance on the dance floor, especially in Jersey. If I go in Jersey, they be really into the Afrocentric of it. You know what I mean? They have really developed something that's not so much as hectic and frenzy as our millenniums are doing, but it's more expressive and has a lot of modern dance, a lot of things that you could tell these people have been doing this for a minute. They have learned how to express themselves through movement, which is kind of lost in millenniums. They don't do that. They don't express through movement. So the dancer still controls what happens in a house club. If you get, I'm a DJ, so if I'm looking out on my floor and I see I got a good group of dancers, them people alone controls the temperature of the party. You know what I mean? So for me, I watch them because they set the tone. If I got a whole bunch of people standing there with cameras in my face, they're less likely to get into the music because they're too busy doing something else. And I might ask bouncers, can you move them out of the way? Just let them get their 10 minutes or 15 minutes of it and move them because I need to connect with the dancers. I've actually done parties where they, back in the day, a DJ would be in the ceiling somewhere, so far away from the dance floor. You know what I mean? Like a god floating over you. And when that distance, when house and everything, the distance shrunk. It shrunk down to where the people wanted to see the DJ. Before he was somewhere in the rafters, or you know, he wasn't even the center of attention. But now that distance changed. So if I go to a club or something and they have it in a booth where all you can see is the head of a DJ going like this, I say, hey, give me a card table, put me in front of that. It's like, what? It's like, yeah, but we have neon lights and stuff that's aimed for that booth. I say, no, would you want to sell lights or me? So they put a table up, and then at the end, they says, wow, you are a show. I say, no, I'm a show that you've been hiding from other people. If they could see what the DJ was feeling, they would know what to do. When you put them up and you cover them up, you disconnecting them from the people. Like a concert, you wouldn't want to go see Beyonce behind a little thing going. You wouldn't. So I argue with these sound people because it's, to me, it's what it is. There's a connection between the dancer and the DJ. Uh, so it's real important. And I like to play for dancers. So if a club call me up and I go to that club and I notice they just standing around with cocktails in their hand, I'll turn it down. Because I'm not working my butt off and y'all not even intending on dancing. I'm not. I can't. A matter of fact, I can't even. I wouldn't know what to do without that connection. You know what I mean? If y'all just standing around, what am I playing for? I might just put a CD on and go outside. So to your point, the dance, the dancer has been the center, but unfortunately, the dancer got old. So my peers, I'm 67, so I don't see my fellow 67 people on the dance floor. I see my 40-year-olds on the floor because my peers just aged out. You know what I mean? It's not that they don't like the music, they just can't do it. So I aim at clubs that still have dancers. Because if you got a dancer, the music is easy, and it's hard to explain to someone listening to this that's not a dancer. Is there's a certain thing that happens in a room full of people dancing to the same rhythm. It's just something about it. They don't have to do the same dance. They just on the same vibe. It's almost ancestral. You know what I mean? It's almost has a silent wave that happens when you have that many souls and that many auras together dancing to a rhythm. All of a sudden, you're seeing smiling faces, you're seeing people crying, you're seeing everything. This is all in a dance. So to me, I still aim at the dancer. That's to me because I'm a dancer. If I go out and I'm going to dance. If I'm DJing, I'm going to dance. How can I? To me, I can't. How can I play the music if I'm not dancing to it? So back to what I said. I said, you know what? Remove those things from me. Like, you know what? I'd rather be on a bingo card table playing so they could see me have an orgasm with the music because then it gives them permission to do the same.
Talk to me about the Basement Boys. Um, you decided to leave in 1989. Why did you leave? And how did that decision impact your career trajectory?
Um, like any group, name it, Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson, whatever. Uh, we was at one time on 4 major labels at once. That makes that our whole life is spending time with each other. You know what I mean? Constantly, live to stay in the hotel rooms, to lay on people's floors in other cities just to be able to go and be a part of stuff. So after a while, your taste, and you got these major labels telling you, we want to sign you, but we don't want you to do what you do. We want you to do what we already have. And I was totally against that. It's like you came to us, and all I want to do is what I've been doing. That's why you're here. You know what I mean? So we began to argue about that because majors and labels want a well-rounded album. I could care less about a ballad, and I'm straight up about it. It's like, you know what? If I ain't feeling it, I don't want to do it. And so my other two partners was willing to do it. They was more versed to be to expand it. To me, if I don't like it, I'm not going to do a good job of it. So we started doing projects where we split it off and did it, and that kind of drives a wedge. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, call to me. I was like, call me when you get to the stuff that I can dance to. That was my thing. It's always been my thing. It's still my thing today. So between that and differences, some bad decisions with drugs, because I come from the drug lifestyle. You know what I mean? My period in the 70s all the way up to the drug was a major part of the culture. You know what I mean? It was a major part. So where it we could be in a club till 10 or 12 o'clock in the morning, not many of us were sober. To do that. You know what I mean? Not that we had to have it, it just was an experiment. And where the music just, you want to do something against what your body thing. So to me personally, I think I overdid it. You know what I mean? Because of the years and years and do that. And I'm saying that to anyone listening to this, it might be a good time now, but eventually you got to pay the bill. So, when it got to that part, we started fighting each other and disagreeing, then we just agreed to separate. It's like, okay, you know what? By then, Crystal Waters was in 100%, which was the last record I did as a basement boy. And they wanted to venture to other things. Soul to Soul was popular, you know what I mean, and R&B. And my boy Ted is well versed in every genre it is. You know what I mean? If he wanted to do a jazz record, he has done it. You can hear some of his repertoire. He can do that. I had no love for that at all. And when it seemed like it became a job, I was done with it. It's like, you know what? This is a job. I don't want to do this. All I want to do is make music to dance to. They said, well, okay, well, I guess we're done as a group. I said, I guess we are. And so we agreed to disagree and we'll leave. And I didn't care what they told other people or whatever, you know what I mean, about it. It's like, when your whole life is music, it is everything about you. You know what I mean? It fuels your soul. It makes you want it. It makes everything about music is you. So the idea of selling it out for money was just sacrilegious. It's like, I don't care. It's like, if I'm not enjoying this, I don't want to do this. You know what I mean? I don't want to do what I have the skills to do, but it's not me. I want to stay on this path where, so this, to leave, walk away from CBS, MCA, Mercury, Warner Brothers, Profile, New Groove, um, and it was like, okay, you know what? That's all I wanted to do. But the major labels wanted to say, hey, can you do other kind of music besides that stuff? To me, that was an insult. It's like, you know what? No, because it's not gonna fuel my soul. I'm not gonna feel happy doing it, and I, and they disagreed. They was like, well, we can do it all. It's like, I didn't want to do it all, and we fought a lot. And to solve the issue, I had nothing to prove anymore. It's like, but after all these number one records, I'm okay. I'm okay. I have nothing to prove. You know, it's like, do you guys want to advance? And you know, they wanted to be soul to soul. You know what I mean? They wanted to venture out to other stuff. And I wasn't mad about that. I just didn't want to do that. All I want to do is the same music I've been doing since I was 17. And so you from depends on what side of the aisle you're on. You can say, yeah, that was a bad movie. You can say, I get it. But what happened. Would I do it the same way if I had to go back? No, I wouldn't. I would try to figure out how to convince each other that this wasn't going to be around like this. Because at the time, it looked like the world was ours. You know what I mean? We had four majors. You know, like, so at the time, it looks like it's easy. I've never been about money. I'm still not about money. I'm about what happens with me in music. From the first time I heard a record at 5. It's like, you know, it's about this music. It's like, you know what? If I can't do it and immerse myself in it, I don't want to do it. So we agreed and we got lawyers and we separated, divided it up. I still own a piece of the company now. I just didn't sell it all. It's like, you know what? I don't want to hold you guys back. If that's what you want to do, go ahead. Go ahead. You know what? And I'll be the crazy one. I'll be the one of the 5 heartbeats that goes off on its own. I'll be that guy. I'll be that guy because you know what? I'd rather not do something I don't like. So, in a nutshell, that's really the story of what happened. And it was a sad tragedy that happens to most groups from you name it, you know, from Gap Band to Commodores to Jackson 5 to Earth, Wind, and Fire. You know, there comes a time when y'all can't be on the same path anymore.
Thank you for sharing. Um, let's talk about your music production. What role does storytelling play in your music production process?
It depends what you mean storytelling. There's several different ways to tell a story, and I'm saying this now. I didn't always figure this out. Um, so because of where I come from, there there were songs that didn't say a word but still told a story, and I was fascinated with that. Open Mind by John Luke Ponty, or Do the Hustle. You know what I mean? All they're saying is do the hustle. You know what I mean? These are telling a story, but it's the story is not always verbal. It is a movement that musicians do that kind of tap in and make you follow the story they're telling. So I'll always try to do that, even if it's a track. A track is important because even in a house track, it has to have a movement, even if it's subtle. As a dancer, you can feel when something is taking you somewhere. So to me, I'm always aiming at that. You know, I'm always aiming that when you drop the needle, that it shouldn't sound like the needle is stuck. It should sound like it's going. And whether you like the journey, that's a whole nother thing. But really, it's all about that whole journey. So over the years, I've gotten better and better at concept, thanks to some great teachers that work with Parliament, Funkadelic, and other musicians that made me understand the more scientific relevance of it. So there are certain chords that dance people like, and they're mostly in minors. And I didn't know this until I just kept asking more questions. It's like, why I like this but don't like that. So in house, we kind of stay in minor chords. Minor chords are because they're expressive, but at the same time they are sad and happy. You know what I mean? So house music thrives on that. It thrives on that. You know, your story is either talking about love, which is the basic theme of most music. Love, you either want it, hate it, trying to leave it, trying to get more of it. So if your music tells one of those four, then you got it. You know what I mean? So even in a track, it's gonna have to have the resemblance of a heartbeat. Because we as humans don't realize we imitate our own heartbeat every day. It's in the music that you listen to. I don't care what it is, rock and roll. It's a heartbeat in there, and the reason why you like it because you can relate to it. Your heart, when you're listening to it, starts trying to pace itself to the music. from your mind. So once I figured that out and I figured the chords of it and how jazz early chords and how gospel early chords is the basis of most of the stuff I like, it's like it was easier to figure out. It's like now I know what to do. Now I figured it out. I understand some of the things about the movement and the music and the way it puts together and why we unconsciously will like it. I could go to a senior citizen's home and take any record I'm doing and put it on, and they would say, "What is that?" But by 5 minutes, they're going like, "I kind of like that," but they don't know what they're doing. Their heart is keeping up with it. Your heart is going to think, 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 think. Your feet start tapping, and and all of a sudden, things you might have been worried about are not important anymore. You're doing something unconsciously. It's a freeing feeling. So that study for me is why I keep doing it. I keep trying to understand that unconscious behavior that we as humans have, and I try to find it in every kind of music there is, not just houses. Like I listen to jazz, I listen to gospel, I listen to a lot of classical because classical has all the bases of stuff, and that keeps me new, keeps me constantly looking for like what's another way I can tell the same story but a different way.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about challenges and lessons learned. Have you faced any setbacks or challenges as a DJ or producer, and how did you overcome them?
Well, wait, you know, trying the best way to say this. Life is like spaghetti on the wall. So you take your whole life and you take the spaghetti and you throw it on the wall. You have one or two choices. You can pay attention to what stick, or you can pay attention to all the stuff that's on the ground. I pay attention to what stick because there's no way you're going to land all that spaghetti to stick on the wall. If you get my analogy of what it is, so there's these pitfalls. Life is not nothing. If you never fail, you'll never soar because in your failure you get the strength. You know what I mean? So right now, I think me and Spen did 3 albums that at four at the same time that was on the top 10 downloads. Yes, that's a great feeling, but we know there's going to be a day when they're not there. So and we have to do other stuff. Are we going to get mad and beat ourselves up? No. Are we going to try to achieve to figure out how to do more like it? Yes. But so like the spaghetti on the wall, they look at the label and say, "Wow, you guys put out six records a month and 2 albums." He said, "How do y'all do it?" They said, "Yeah." I said, "But y'all only looked into what's stuck on the wall. If you look down on the ground, you will see we do way more out there, and all you seeing is what's stuck. To you, it looks great. To us, we're still working, trying to figure out how to throw the whole pot on the wall and to stick." So that's how I see life. I did some things. I was in a terrible car accident 26 years ago, and a car hit me at a red light at 70 miles an hour and spit me into a pole. And I got knocked unconscious. And when I woke up, I was 2 blocks away walking around. And I didn't know I had a concussion. And, I was more concerned about my buddy car I was driving. Where's his car? The car was totaled. Anyway, uh, that was before the end of Basin Boys. And all of a sudden, I couldn't decipher as well. You know what I mean? Some things, that concussion, I should have went to the hospital, but I didn't. You know what I mean? I was more just trying to keep functioning. We had stuff, we had all these record label deals, and a record label deal could be 22 records for each deal. So these guys, look, you know what? We could do one record at a time, but you 22 means we have to rush it. Anyway, in the next 10 years, I started noticing that the numbers started making sense. So I could see, when I hear music now, I see numbers. So anything, any kind of music, I can count it off. I can tell you what it's going to do according to the numbers it just did. So in that realization, is when I realized that something changed. You know, I don't know if it's something unlocked or something new, but ever since that day, it wasn't automatic. It wasn't the next day or nothing. It was, you know, my brain had to rewire. So in the rewire, I learned that I could do anything. So uh that's when the bass boys when we broke up. I all of a sudden, first I immersed myself in pity and sadness, and then I had to bounce out of it. And when I did, I went back to school and I got several degrees, and just all of a sudden my brain saw numbers and everything. I mean, to me, when it rings, I hear numbers. I can tell by the drops. I can hear numbers. Call it crazy, but all of a sudden, things that I used to pay attention that was abnormal not normal. I can count them. That's in music. That's in everything. That's in the way I talk, the way you talk. That's in the way it rings. That's in the way silence is never silent. And when I returned back and decided that this is after a terrible drug thing, jails, institution, and all that kind of stuff, and wallowing in self pity about, well, I wonder my love of my life, music, is gone. Oh, woe is me. And to somebody their whole life was about music, it was a mournful feeling. And so after I had enough of wallowing, I went back to school, and they said, "You won't." I was in my 40s. And they were saying, you can't go back to school. You're stupid. Your test scores are horrible. I said, then start me over. And they started me over. I don't mean to go off topic, but it's real important to explain how I got, how I overcame this horrible thing. Things that I thought that was going to stop me. What I mean? Things that I thought I had a part to mess up, instead of realizing that life is a journey and everything that you learn, good and bad, is to help you get to where you need to go. So I went back and I studied, and within 2 years, I was the top 4.0 top thing, and all the people that said I couldn't, and I couldn't explain why. It's like all of a sudden, algebra, geometry, organic chemistry, all of a sudden, all I had to do was apply my brain and it would do it. And I was like, wow, you're talking about a guy that had all C and D's in elementary and high school. All of a sudden, nothing became impossible. I just started applying the same numbers in music to education. It's like, okay, I need to understand the variables and the time in the tables, how to do a coefficient for this. I need to understand physics. Guess what? If the guy next to me can do it, I can do it. And I said, okay, fine. And next, 3 three degrees later, 3 degrees later, and with a 4.0 national high score and winning awards for having the highest score in the nation, I couldn't figure out how I got here. I just really realized that anything I could do if I apply myself to. And it wasn't later till I realized that that accident had a part to do with it. So when I returned back to music, one boy was more expensive. Said, something's different about you. Like, well, actually, I no longer need a chemical to help me reach that place. Now I can understand that it's about numbers, it's about this. Some of the things that I had as a knack in a record store, now I know why. What I mean? It's like, okay, so now when I hear music, I can say, yeah, I don't like them. I don't like them numbers. What I mean? And that kind of thing. And people look at me strange, and it's like, well, it, it just is. I can't explain it. It's far beyond me to explain. So at that, this is a perfect example of what I mean. Something bad could turn into something good. So I tell people this all the time. It's like, you know what? When people telling you can't do something, it's up to you to figure out how to do it. If you're listening to them and you believe them, it'll never happen. So now I'm in a doctorate program. I'm going to get PhDs, and this is a guy that they said couldn't learn nothing. And I'm like, wait a minute. So if I can do music and I can do all these degrees, I can do whatever I want. And I returned and I said, okay, now let's do this with a clean slate. So that's a perfect example of taking jails, institutions, drugs, and bad decisions and stuff like this to say, okay, if I'm still here, I got a purpose, basically.
Fantastic journey. Tell us what degrees you have.
Well, at first, At first, all I wanted was an AA degree. I had to do something being sober. So in addiction, you just used to having something to keep you busy. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna change my addiction. I'm gonna make it education. So I just started. I first started there, and I got the AA degree, and also did plays, musicals, and ceramic exhibitions. All right, so I'm feeding this addiction nature with other stuff besides drugs, and all of a sudden things are making sense in numbers. So that was the first degree. And then I went to a 4-year institution and took double majors. So you take 12 credits, I was taking 24. And they was like, dude, you're too old to be taking 24 credits. That's what they was telling me. I was like, yeah, well, at the minute I start failing, take me off of it. I didn't fail. I was on campus most of the day. I was living in a situation, winning poetry contests, doing art exhibitions and musicals and plays. To me, life all of a sudden was open. So that gave me a double major in an undergrad. And I got indoctrinated into a PhD program because I had a 4 point. So I couldn't explain nothing. The PhD program took me all the way through undergrad and a master's. And then they said, okay, in order to get your PhD, you need a minimum of $60,000. I was like, well, hey, I ain't doing that. Because by the time I would have finished the PhD program, I'd have been 55, 56. I was like, what am I going to do with that then? At the same time, I returned to music. So I said, okay, you know what? I'll take my degrees and work in the community. And that's when I started going to communities and found out I had more love to help people than I did than to stand above my peers. You know what I mean? So I took all that education and abnormal psychology and social behavior modification scenarios and paradigms and went to the community and said, okay, now I'm back. Do you know what? Come here, Mr. Drughead. I'm not calling him Mr. Drughead for the sake of this short conversation. Mr. Drughead, I've been where you've been. What's the problem? All right, you know what the real problem is? Let me help you. Hey, you with high blood pressure. Let me explain your numbers. Your bottom number is this, your top number is this. This is what it means. I break it down in English. I started going into the prisons and say, hey, y'all in here for another reason, but you know what? Just not your problem. Drugs not your problem. The problem is you don't believe in yourself. And I started taking all this knowledge and going out and getting so much reward that I never went back to finish it. To put myself in debt for the next 10 years, paying back PhD money. I had nothing to prove anymore. Every obstacle that was in front of me, I had done. It's like, you know what? I don't need those letters. You know what? Let me go back and finish the unfinished, which is music. And Spen said, come on. There you go. Spen never doubted me. He said, yo, come on, yo, we can do this. So this guy that I known since he was 16 now is 40, and we still doing music, and still some years later we're still doing it now. And he still kind of trusts that intuition that he can't explain and I can't explain, and we just go out and do this camaraderie. Like, you know what? Religion came out. I found a purpose in my God. I realized that I'm not a product of my own doing. That something higher, more supreme, is making it go, because I should be dead by hanging in the clubs, doing those hardcore drugs and no sleep and working in sessions all night long and then going to work. So that's so the highest degree I say would be a master's and a second undergrad, because I never got tired of knowledge. And once I realized that I could do other things, it's like, okay, let me go out and help people. And that's what I did. I worked in clinics and I did that for like 3 years. And then I got tired of the whole bureaucracy of it and how they really wasn't trying to help people. They was trying to steal their insurance. And I was like, I can't do this either. Same thing like music. I can't do it. If it's not going to be pure and I'm not really helping somebody, I'm not just signing them up for insurance and say, see you later. So that's the man you see now. And now I do it in music. Somebody listening to this and you got some music, yo, hit my web page up and say, what do you think? What can I do? I'll share it freely with anyone. Anyone. Like, you know what? This is what I like about it. This is what I don't like about it. Because that's all I can say. I can't tell you how to make $1 million. I can tell you what I think for me, what I would do. And to a lot of people, that's valuable. To a lot of other people, I want to hear that. Same person keep calling me. I apologize. So, and here's the man in front of you now. a minister of music. In pandemic, I just thought churches started inviting me in to play music and sermon together, and now the collective minds, has grown to 15,000 easy uh, on a good day, and the quantizes in like the Motown of dance, and books. I got books coming out, and so I'm a blessed man. I mean, that did those trials. Circling back around, your question was that all these horrible stories. I can sit here and tell you horror stories, but I also can tell you victories from those horror stories.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Your your partnership with TJ Spen has been pivotal.
Yeah.
What makes your collaboration so enduring and successful?
Respect to each other. The guy is a genius. You know what I mean? And he's not so. He doesn't have an ego. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, it's hard for me to work with people this arrogant. I can't get around it. If I'm wide open like a book and someone feels like they're better than someone else, and I'm not, it don't have to be to me. Just that whole I need to make a lot of money and somebody's going to steal my music and all that kind of stuff to me says non-believer. That means that you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe in your journey, that someone could come along and steal from you. Like, really? You know what I mean? Like, if they can steal something that you have so much of abundance why are you worried? Something, you're more than a cell that is mutated into millions of cells. You are something that has a purpose. And your purpose is to share it, not to worry about how you're going to bank it. So that comes from me. That's my philosophy because I watch my predecessors. I watch the documentaries and I watch what they say and what they do. And I watch how some of the mistakes they made and I internalize them and says, the ones I respect the most is the ones that did it not for the money. They did it for the love. And I try to share that with other people. It's like, hey, the odds of you becoming famous is you'd be better off playing a lottery. But the odds of you being happy is up to you.
That's real talk.
Yeah.
Um, I have a million questions. I'm trying to find the right one. Um, was there ever a gig where things didn't go as planned? How did you adapt to save the performance?
Any DJ will tell you this. If you never have a bad gig, you're not playing. There's things happen. Um, some of the more notorious that my friends and people talk about a lot is playing in a club here in Baltimore. It was called 347. It was a house people's perfect place to be. And my man DJ Biscuit here that was playing and said, "Hey, I want you to play for my birthday." So I left my residency at 12:30 to go close his club. And so I get in there. I'm wearing nothing else but basically a man's version of a tutu, and only because I knew that that hey, I need to stand out. I need to come here and upset this club, and I'm more visual with it. And so once I convinced the naysayers, good. So I'm in there, I'm jamming. The club is burning up. It's like 100 degrees in there, and the everything was right. The monitor right, the system is right. I'm right. You know what I mean? And so like I said, I don't do drugs, so that I'm always on the same level. Drugs is weird. You could be anywhere. So like, okay, when with it, they screaming and yelling, and the whole building blacks out. I hit the bass on something, the whole building black out. But for 5 minutes, they did not care in the dark. All I'm hearing is people screaming, yeah, yeah. I'm like, this is the worst thing I have. They're gonna say I blew this whole building up. So by the time they cut it back on, they resumed, and all I did is just keep smiling. You know what I mean? Because I tell any DJ, they not supposed to know what you thinking. You know what I mean? I'm panicking like, oh man, because you want every gig to go right. So that has now become something that people still talk about. That, yeah, remember that night you blew up the building? And it's just the way I play. And the system was set up for them to play linear like this. And I'm kind of like that. And I hit that and it just knocked the circuit breakers out. The master circuit breakers of the whole building, lights, emergency lights, everything. I mean, pitch black. And I just didn't sweat. I just stood there and just waited. And about 10 minutes later, they fixed it and they came back on again. And they're to a rousing applause. And where I was panicking, like, oh, I'll never live this down. You know, what I mean, I'm in my gear, I'm in my performance mode, and they right there. Yeah, any DJ know what I mean? When they right in the palm of your hand, I mean that we're synced. I'm like, I don't have to think what I'm doing. I'm like, wherever I go, it's because y'all telling me to go there, and we're here, and right at the peak of it, blackout. That was, that was a weird one. The other one, I'm in my residency plan, and same kind of thing. The club is packed, and they vibing with me, and they like this, and all of a sudden the speaker bursts in flames. For those people that are not in music, that they might be listening to this, a speaker has a coil in it. At least the older ones do. You rub that coil in house music like this constantly. It's friction. It's friction, 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 friction. It caught on fire. Fire department came and everything. It's like, again, people in that room said, Tony, you just destroyed sound system. Not realizing that, hey, it's just I'm playing house, and house is relentless. You know what I mean? It's and they're going with me, and I'm watching y'all. Now y'all screaming. Now y'all rolling on the floor. Y'all right with me. You're right with me. Bam! Oh, everybody out. It's fire. Uh, Another situation. I'm on a boat. Somebody said, "Hey, I want you to do your birthday party. I want to do my birthday party." It's like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna bring vinyl, and I bought 4 bags of vinyl, and we was playing the boat. We was out in the middle of the Chesapeake at Harbor de Grace, and the boat hits a rock. All right, and it's sideways on the rock, and people got hurt, and people screaming like this. It's like the Poseidon on crack. So records is thrown everywhere, and and it was somebody's like 50th birthday party, and I knew them, and that's the only reason why I did it. So the boat starts taking on water, and it's at night, so you really can't see the land. All you can see far away is light lampposts, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna die in this water in the Chesapeake, in black water, because it's black. The boat lights went off too. So the Coast Guard comes and say, okay, we're going to slowly get each one of you off. So I stood back, and when they came to me, they said, "Oh, you ready?" I said, "I'm not leaving." They said, "Why are you not leaving?" I said, "I'm not leaving my records." you know, if your whole life is about collecting those records, I'm not leaving them. I will. You say, if you don't take my records with me, and they says, well, it's 2 or 3 people here. Hey, then we'll have to leave you here and come back and hope that you're still here in the morning. I said, fine, because I'm not going to live with myself if I leave these records and either they go down in this boat or somebody steal them. Either way, I'd rather die on this boat. They left me on that boat alone. All I could hear is the boat sinking and creaking, and I was like, you know what? This is how you're going to die. For the love of music, this is how you're going to die. So eventually, I guess somebody on land said, everybody's off the boat. Take the damn records with them. Because if he died and over, because you didn't want to put records in a boat with him, they came back and said, hey, okay, we'll take your records. I said, fine, let's go. Mind you, the boat was already, I was, starting to seep. I was like, I'm not leaving them. I'm from the vinyl era, and records are hard to get. I'm not, if I lose this record, I'm not going to be able to find a replacement of it. I said, you know what? I hope they please come back, but you know what? This will be this is the way I die. Because if I leave these records, I'll never see them again. 4 bags. So they bought 2 boats, one for me and the bag of records, and the other one had the Coast Guard and my other 2 bags and the other bags of records. That was a nightmare. I'll never forget. And I just made a choice. I mean, kind of that was 23 years ago. But it made me realize how much I love this. It's like, it's everything I am. I'm not, this is after basically said, I'm never again going to walk away from music. I'm never. I will die. That's a horror story for you.
Incredible.
Right? And I had another DJ play with me. He left. He said, "No, hey, you die alone," and left me. It was like maybe 80 to 100 people on this yacht, and they hit a rock on the surface. Last and really memorable one. I'm in Piedmont Park in Atlanta. All right, so it wasn't my first time playing in Atlanta, and Piedmont Park is a huge, wide open park, and so I'm playing, and so they had a stage, you know, I guess they rented it or whatever, and the stage is on metal and plywood, and I'm playing, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. So the promoter was a heavyweight guy, like maybe 180, 190 or 220, and he comes behind me on the mic and he starts doing it with me. And I'm like this, I'm like, okay. Then another person comes on the other side of me. And the whole place, hands up in the air and they're screaming. And we're doing like this. The stage starts doing this. And all of a sudden, it bounced up and took my CD players and everything and mixing everything and threw it across the room. So I was so mad. I said, why y'all come up and do this with me? Boing, 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 bam. It was dead silence. People just stood there. And I'm sitting there with tears in my eyes saying, oh, please let my hard drive still work. That's all I cared about. Believe it or not, the hard drive crashed on the ground, took tape, and stuck it together, said a couple prayers. So I got one more story. And I mean, I appreciate nobody. I've done a lot of interviews, but they never ask these kind of questions.
We different. We different.
So this is Winter Music in Miami. I'm down there celebrating Baltimore Boys anniversary or something. So I'm down there. It's Ultra Crystal, Quentin Harris, and Melvin Gentry, and more. And um, so we're playing, and I'm playing on decks, on records. I mean, that's before everything was Pioneer flash drives. So I'll get on, and I'm kind of nervous because I'm looking at the mixed crowd and stuff, and I get on, and so I'm playing after Spin, and this girl jumps out of the crowd wearing a bikini, a white girl jumps up and she's next to me. And all of a sudden she grabs the record and goes, zigga, 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 and just knocked the needle off of it. And still was standing there just screaming and yelling, woohoo, wee. And I turned almost instantly into a monster. And so luckily Spin ran up and grabbed her. Because the record, she's doing on one of my classics. It's like, oh, I will kill you in front of witnesses.
Baltimore almost came out.
Yeah, because the record's like, I might not even get this record. And if I'll drown on a ship, yeah, sure, we got a problem. And it was, I don't know what made her think she could mix and why she wanted to come up and grab the deck and felt like she was entitled to do so. But if Spen hadn't been standing close, he just got off. I probably would have pushed her from a stage that was at least 6 to 7 feet off the ground. But I mean, that was one of the worst scenarios where I just saying, "Wow, that it." And I got plenty more, but that's enough. They were the ones that came to the top of my head. If you're a DJ, there's no such thing as a perfect thing. You gotta be there when the power glitches. If you're on a computer, if you're on a controller, all it takes is the power to go blink, and in the middle of your mix, everything goes chaos. So one of the best things I've tell any DJs to say, "Hey Tom, how do you do this?" It's like you have to learn how to rebound quick. You know what I mean? You need to know when to quit on a mix and get out. You do not let it turn into shoes in a dryer. You know, that means you just don't know when to quit. Let it go. The person's the average dancer attention just wants you to clear it. You know, once you have problems, you need to hear it before they hear it. And you will have problems. I don't know a DJ that doesn't have problems. There's no such thing. Maybe it's the record. Maybe it's just you thought you could pull it off. Maybe the monitor is too far away from you. You can't hear. There's a lot of factors that could happen that just makes you a little off. And so there's a lot of stories like that. But I think I answered enough about that question. Go ahead. What's the next one? And I'm enjoying this more than you.
No, this is incredible. Thank you for giving me the time. I appreciate it. How do you approach situations where a crowd isn't responding to your set as you expected?
I go ahead and bow out because it's about them. It's not about me. It's about them. If I'm inadequate or maybe the way what I do is not for them and the promoter set me up for that, then I mean somebody y'all must be waiting for someone else. So a lot of time people are waiting for something else. So they're not going to be polite to anything else until that person comes on. It's like, you know what? I do enough and then I just say, hey, I can't get them. I'm not their cup of tea, or they're waiting for something that I'm not. You know what? I still get paid, right? Here you go. Here's the headphones. And there's no such thing where you can't bounce back from a bad party. They, I try to explain to a lot of DJs because I have a lot of nephews. I call them nephews. They're not my real nephews, but they are studiers like I was. It's like you listen. It's you. You're only good as your last party. And your last party is not really your last party. So you can have a party that was dopest party ever. The attention span of your people is going to be until the next party. So, and ironically, that goes with your bad party. So you got a party that doesn't go right. Guess what? Their attention span is to the next party. So don't sweat. Keep going and accept it. You know what I mean? I could go to another country where I don't know their background. See, in the States, I pretty much know the background of the people I play for. I know we have some similarities somewhere. But if I'm in Amsterdam, I don't know what your background is. So I'm hoping that you're willing to adapt to me. And if you don't, I'm okay with it. It's like, hey, you're lost. Because had you just cooperated, we could have had a beautiful journey. But you don't want to? Fine. Fine. Now most of us now DJ on a maybe with 5 or 6 other DJs. Like, hey, my name is really on the bill. It's not for me to play. It's for to bring numbers in here. Y'all are already in here. You don't want me to play. You're lost. I'm out. I'm out. Because that's what it's about now. It's not about who's playing. It's about how many from a promoter. How many people can I get in here? So once they put my name on a flyer, I'm already paid because that's all you wanted. That's all you wanted was to have a draw of people. You could care less. And I've been to plenty of parties where they put my name on the flyer and me and some other people, and the system sucked. It's like you didn't care how we sounded at all, did you? You just wanted to get them in there. Accept it. Say, okay, one for the book. Now, real talk behind the scenes, I'm beating the heck out of myself. I cannot accept not connecting. It's hard for me. It's really hard. I tend to just walk off somewhere and just isolate and just say, just talk to my father and say, what do you want me to learn from this? Why did you let this happen to me? Because to me, it's that personal. You know what I mean? It's that personal. It's like, for real, I push myself after playing for 40, 50 years. I should sound like damn near good. You know what I mean? I should sound, you don't have to like it, but you can say, you know what? He was doing his thing though. You know, and if that doesn't happen for whatever reason, I beat myself up. But I allow myself to do that because with the next party I play, no matter where it's at, I'm going to crush it with so much vengeance because of that. You know what I mean? Because of what I just went through last week or whenever. So I try to tell them that it's like, you know, when you take each thing as a learning experience and just keep moving on, not everybody's going to love you. Not everybody's going to like you. Not everybody's your friend. Your job is to entertain the people. If you can't, then it's just a bad day. Let it go. It's like going to work. Not every day you're going to go to work smiling. Now, I mean, maybe, you know, a lot of people say, Tom, you got more medals on your chest than anyone, but I don't see you playing in Ibiza and Southport and UK and all that. I said, well, it's not that I didn't want to. It's just that I'm so much trusting that my father, what he wants from me, it'll come to me. You know what I mean? And what he doesn't want from me, I have to accept that. Like, you know what? It could be something horrible that I think I need. When guess what? Hey, I'm always in the top charts of stuff of producers and this and anyone that gives me a ear chance. And the DJ says, dude, I don't particularly like what you're playing, but the way you play it, oh, I've never seen that. And I pride myself on that. It's like, you know what? Then I'm cool with that. And I go listen to other DJs the same way. It's like, you know what? I don't really like that style of music, the kind of music you're playing, but you are a master at it. And I give somebody credit for it. It's like, you know what? You're a master at it. And I was entertained just watching and listening to how you're doing what you're doing. Do I like that kind of music? No. But yo, I'm gonna give you major props. And I've been to places where DJ doesn't blend like the way in Baltimore we're blenders. Everything's about the mix. I've been in places in other cities where they don't blend, but they were masters at selection. I watched them rip the club up just in selection, and that's art.
How
Did I answer?
no, that was perfect. That was perfect. Um, how has technology from vinyl to digital platforms changed your craft over the years?
Oh, you answering great questions, man. What you do? Stay up and think about these great questions.
Listen, I got the Tommy Davis. I ain't gonna f this shit up. Let's go.
Wow. Well, I never knew this was gonna happen. So vinyl, when I started hearing some greats that did it the way I like to love to do it, where and this is from I call my mentor, is a guy called Mandrill Harris out of DC. And he played this club called the Clubhouse. And this guy could break a record down. Break it down. I mean, make it say, if he wanted to say something, to say a phrase or a verse over, he could meticulously make it sound like the record was recorded like that. And I happened to have the luck of working with him in a record store, one of the first record stores I worked with. And he would say to me, Tom, hey, I know you like the beat, but there's other parts of the record. I'm like, okay. And he was the first person to break down the structure of a song. And he could do it where he could make a song do whatever he wanted to do. If he if he wanted when he used to say, every woman, it's all in me, it's all in me, it's all he could do it on vinyl perfectly, not a miss, not a beat. And I was sitting watching him saying, and I would ask him, like, how'd you do that? He said, I'm not listening. You're listening to what is happening. You're not listening to what's happening before it. So I'm listening for the woman, and that's what I'm mixing to. You're only hearing what I'm mixing out of to do it. So he would spend a lot of time explaining that a song has a 16 bar. Most songs have a 16 bar intro with a 32 bar verse with an 8 bar, sometimes an 8 bar or 16 bar bridge that comes out into another chorus, into the second or third verse, and then it goes into a vamp. That's where you hear a solo and stuff like this. So if you want to do something that's going to be in that solo, that's right after the second verse, that's right after the second bridge, that the second and the last bridge, and that's how you get out of it. When it goes into that 16 bar solo, or when it comes out of it, it's going to start to do this thing where everything is in the whole kitchen sink, all the music is in there, everything, and that's what you like. The people are screaming, you want to do that, you want to get out of it. You're going to have to get back to that flute thing that was happening to before, because that way you can play the mix. And I'm like, what, what, what? And we was in the store, and he was just constantly saying, you know what, you're good at the beat thing, but you're not telling a story. It's like, these are great records, and you just missed the whole point of playing that record. And I would hear him play in the clubs, and he would do it, and I was like, wow, he made records I couldn't stand, make me like them, because he just reconstructed them. So he was the guy that made me change the way I was thinking about a song on vinyl. So because I worked in a record store 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, I could practice. I mean, it's my job is selling records. So I'm looking at, I could read vinyl. I could look at the lines, you know what I mean? Because you play that much, you look at the lines, and I could go wham, bam, like, you know what I mean? And that means that I can cue drop right on it, not live, but in my headphone. So I can switch a record that quick and go bam right in my headphones, saying, "Wow, it's right on it," and just go back. And people stand on the side saying, "How the hell did you do that?" I said, "You play in a record store for years, and you're playing 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. You should know something." So his knowledge and his grasp of what the technology of a song was. And so when vinyl was playing out, I didn't want to let it go. I became, when people knew it, people come in the record store and say, "Dude, you don't even use headphones." I said, I don't have to. So I've been playing this record all day. So why play the headphones? Drop the needle on it and listen to the first note to come in and know it. Say, all right, and they wouldn't even hear it. I would, and live, and just hold it, it's in. But I've been doing this all day. You know what I mean? So I should be able to do that with this record. And they gave me a reputation and say, "Dude, you are a turntablist for real. You don't even use headphones." I said, "No, because you're not a dance floor. I'm in a record store, so I could do that without taking a chance." Man, I've been playing the same records. So when things moved to CDs, I was like, I can't touch the CD. It's like, oh no, it don't have any grooves. I was reluctant. Everybody said, "Yo, you need to do CDs. Your back will feel a lot better, dummy." And I said, "No, no, no, no. I got these records. Matter of fact, I almost drowned on a boat for these records. You think I'm gonna switch over to CD?" So I was reluctant. And then that somebody says, "Well, you don't like the CD player," because I used to play on a Newmark 17T. It was the first mixer that had a 2-second recorder delay. So you could do samples, just take 2 seconds over any record you're playing. And I just mastered it because our house was earlier. So I could catch Jack, Jack your. And so while I'm playing a record in the store, I just go, "Jack your," down on top of Jack, Jack, Jack your, Jack, Jack, Jack your. And people standing there saying, "What is that? How are you doing that?" I said, "It's on the mixer. It's got something called a sampler on it." And 8 hours a day, 6 days a week, I'm playing this thing. So needless to say, I broke many to the dislike of the store owner. It's like you breaking these things up to do it. It had pieces that was plastic, not meant for to do what I was doing with it. So when CDs came, I said, you know what, I can switch over because now the technology went from 2 seconds to 4 seconds to 8 seconds. It's like, okay, in 8 seconds, I can do all the stuff that Mandrill taught me years ago, but 8 seconds gives me 8 bars. And 8 bars is the basic unit of any song. So I could take a record and catch 8 bars and take the record off, switch to another record, and while that 8 bars is still playing in a loop, do that. So I was like, okay, you know what? My back is feeling a lot better. Because most clubs, like I said, had booths up here. You had to go up ladders. You had to do a whole bunch of stuff with these bags of records. So when I finally switched over into like CD players, I was just doing stuff. I mean, people were saying, "How are you doing that?" And it's like, "Well, I'm doing what I used to do with vinyl, but now instead of using two sticks, I have a lighter." So I'm thinking like a lighter. He says, "But you're cheating." I'm like, no, you're playing with sticks. Not mad at you. Keep on rubbing them sticks. I have a lighter. I can do the sticks and more. So CDs was in for a while, then CDs starting to stick because guess what? I'm a sloppy DJ. I'm not putting them back in the case. Guess what happens to your CD? You get a scratch on it, it'll get stuck. So a buddy of mine said, "Hey, they got this thing called a controller." I'm like, "I'm not doing it." Serrato was just too many hook this, hook that, hook that. I said, "I'm not doing that." So then my boy Greg Lewis had a tractor and he said, "Dude, this is for you. This is your advance, your sample thing. Tractor does 32 bars. Sync perfectly." And I said, "Really? Nah." He just kept staying on me like for about a year and said, "Okay." Then he bought one and said, "Look, just play on mine." I was hooked. I was like, wow. Because to me, music is numbers. So you know what? The more I have control of the numbers, the better I can say, and I'm not showing off, I'm just explaining how I'm thinking. All right. So if I have 16 of Mafumbe and all it's doing is that whistle part at the end, wham, 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 I can take that 16 and take a 32 from this other record right here that is playing Used to Hold Me. And I can take that and put that on top of it. And together they make it a whole nother record. And it's like and if I really wanted to be fancy, I could throw that 16 off. So don't play neatly. I want you to play against that other beat. And it makes a whole nother sound. And the people looking at you like, is that a remix? Do you have a remix of that record? It's like, no, I'm just replaying the numbers. And so they started calling it Traumatize. So you see it on my t-shirts and stuff like this because people, the avid listeners were saying, dude, you're producing live on the spot. It's like, yeah. And I owe that to Mandrill and some other people that explained that this music is all numbers. It's all relative to you understanding. So you play me. So me, I play it like a chess game. So if I'm trying to get to this record, there's 100 ways to do it. There's 100 ways to do it. I can take eight lists. I can take odd numbers. I can take 18. This might sound weird in numbers, but if you people hear something redundantly over and over again, and all of a sudden they start dancing to it. So now I got you in that groove. Now I can throw something else weird underneath that, and something else. So I'm kind of doing this virtual organically. I'm not planning them like, okay, you know what? You take this. Wow, that sounds good. Stop. All right, throw your head against the wall. Okay, come back to get yourself together. Now go back. And every time I play, that happens because I couldn't keep doing this without that. It would get boring if I didn't say, you know what? I understand production, I understand the music, I understand why. And when I'm playing on Tractor S4, because at first it was S2, I can actually make records live on the spot. I mean, many times I just stopped and just shook my head and said, why wasn't I recording? because it just happens spontaneous. It has to be what they giving me, and what creativity most of the time accidentally happens when you juggle numbers. So it all goes back, like I said, all of a sudden music became numbers, and numbers I can always do it. I go in studio session. People say, "Okay, what do you want to do?" I said, "No, I'm here to work with you. What do you want to do?" I ain't got nothing. Just give me a minute. Okay, you know this record right here. It gets to this part right here, right here. We gonna take something like that eight. We were like that eight, like yeah, take something like that eight, and keep on passing. You mean like this? Yes, stop. That's eight. I said, I want you to do that. I want you to do a 2-bar string that only copies the first two of that eight. And it's like, they look at me like, oh, are you serious? Like, yeah, do that. I say, yeah. And all of a sudden they're going like, yo, that worked. That worked. I was like, hey, I'm smiling like I don't have time to go through why. I said, it's numbers. It's numbers. In classical music, numbers. Everything is numbers. So now that I'm telling people, like, you know what? If you can play with sticks if you want to, and it's fine. Or you can now I can play with a blowtorch and recreate live on the spot. Like this weekend I played with Fred Pierce, my man from New York, and we always have so much fun together because he's a control head. So I'm like, okay, a controller, and I'm a controller head. So he just stands there and looks at me and says, how did you think like that? Just any DJ knows that it's a difference to mixing than playing it like a chess game. It's like, you know what? I took, I mean, well, he was watching me. I was playing Melissa Morgan, Still in Love, and just the yeah, on top of the newest record I did called Power, on top of Wally Jump. Um, and he was saying, you just took the piano from this record, the vocal from this record, and the drums for that record. I said, yeah. I said, but all that to make one record. And he said, just stand there, just saying, dude, you need to come to New York. I said, yeah, I don't know. I said, but I am where I'm supposed to be. And I thank God for that, the numbers thing. And so I can play anywhere and do my numbers thing if they into it. Not everybody's into you changing the song they know. And a lot of people like, don't mess with my song. Like, hey, I'm the wrong guy. Because I'm not going to stand there with a red cup in my hand going for 7 minutes. I'm just not going to do that. I'm very much a hands on steering wheel. I'm a producer. So to me, it's not that I'm trying to ruin your record. I'm trying to keep me entertained, and the people are tired of hearing your record. Your record, yeah, you're glad to hear it, but some other people here saying, "Why are you just playing that record?" I'm tired of hearing that. So all I do is change it. Rain, 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 rain. Like, oh damn, what version of rain was that? I was like, you mean Let It Fall? Well, I don't know. I just changed the numbers on it, and it's starting to, a lot of people trying to get me to go to Native Instruments who makes track and say, hey, you need to. I could show these young white boys and your people exactly what your equipment can do, but every time I send them stuff, trying to without telling them the story of numbers, they says, well, we don't need a guy your age. You're not what you're gonna do? Encourage other people in the senior citizen home to buy mixers? I get it. Like, okay, if I was 18 or 19, I'd be your genius. But because I'm a black guy and I'm a certain age, you have no use for me. But anyway, that's the fundamental of traumatized and what happens in studios and in DJing. It's I'm a walking thing. I mean, music. I don't barely watch television. You know what I mean? At all because I think it whitewashes your mind. If you just keep doing things that doesn't encourage your mind to grow, you become that product. So if I'm not talking about music, I'm not doing music. I'm listening to classical. I'm listening to. I try to stay in house because other genres can mess you up a little bit. My numbers start getting skewed. If I listen to trap, and I like the way it sounds, but I can't absorb it because I'm playing calculus and it's playing arithmetic. You know what I mean? It's almost soulless in a way. So I kind of do that, and so people just say, "Wow, this all you do is music 24/7." I was like, "Yeah," but it's not. You make it sound like a curse to me. I'm in heaven.
Let's go back to the record stores. How did your time working at Music Liberated and Metro Stereo shape your understanding of music and the industry?
It was a guy. It was a white guy that worked at Music Liberated. I was buying. I was coming to his store, and this is disco era, and I was 17, 18, and he was like, "How do you know what records to buy?" I said, "Because every record you buy, I turn my customers when they ask me what's hot, I just go to the records you just bought, and you have a knack for picking them out." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. It's just, uh, um, it's just a knack of knowing what I like." And then he said, "Well, what else?" I said, "I also look at the credits, producers, you know what I mean, that kind of stuff. And people don't read those things. So if I look at a record and it says, Laurie Levan mix with Boy Jarvis on the keys, with something like this, it's pretty much, I ain't got to listen to this record. I know it's going to work well in my collection." So I would do that in wider ranges. And he's like, so he said, "You want a job?" And I'm 18. I had a part-time job at a post office that could have been a lifetime thing. I went home and I said, "Mom, I'm ready to leave the post office." She said, "For what?" I said, "I want to work in this record store." She said, "You're throwing your life away for that?" I said, "I got to." And I quit the post office and I started working for him and just doing what he thought I did to the customers. I just, hey, he said, "What do you like?" They said, "Well, I like this." So, for example, somebody said, "Hey, you know what? I love that record called Hot Shot." I said, "You like that record?" I said, "You know what? I'm thinking, I know why you like that record. I got other records that sound like that record." So I said, "You like that? You're like this, and this and that." And they listen to it. Or sometimes back in the day, we didn't open the records. They would come back the next week and say, "Yo, them records you gave me was right. How'd you know?" I said, "Because you already told me what you liked." You know what I mean? And we share more in common, for that thing, for the guy. I can't do it with every guy, but I can do it for the ones that say yes. So if you come in and say, "I like Gwen Guthrie," I was like, "Okay, you know what? You need to hear also Grace Jones, also which Grace Jones, you know what I mean? Which songs, you know what I mean? I try to think would feed your appetite." So Music Liberate was that he gave me that chance, and he had this thing about memorizing songs. So I could say, "Hey, Bernie, this guy is looking for a import version of YMCA." And like, I didn't even know there was an import. He said, "Yes, it was. It was about 3 years ago. It was on this collection of Unidis in Canada. Does he want it? Tell him I can order it for him." It's like, how'd you know that? So under his tutelage, I just watched him and just said, "You know what? I need to memorize music like that." You know what I mean? That he could recall, this guy is a belly fat Jewish guy. It's like, yeah, so there's a science. And it's like, he memorized, and he just didn't do it in disco. He did it in reggae, gospel, world music. And he could memorize. He could memorize the label, everything, damn near the number on it. And I was like, this guy is, if I'm smart, he is Albert Einstein. And I stayed with him for years until I felt like he was pimping me as a slave. I mean, the store numbers doubled and tripled. And I was like, "Hey, can I have a raise?" He said, "No, I'm not giving you a raise. Why am I giving you a raise?" It's like, "What?" "Because I'm looking at your sales." He said, "Yeah. So you don't like it? Find another place." One day he said it one too many times, and I walked out. I mean, another store came to me and said, "Psst, come here." He said, "How much is he paying you?" I said, "Well, about $1 over minimum wage." He said, "I'm gonna triple that if you come work with me in my store." So I went back to him. I said, I don't want to leave this store. I like working with you, but they offered me triple to leave here. And all I want you to do is give me double and I'll stay. And he said, see you. And my eyes got all wet. And I was like, 'cause to me, he was a father figure. It's like, you know what? You made me understand how to memorize music, how to memorize it and identify it. And I left out of there and I went to the competing store and I put them out of business within 2 years. And that hurt. But that hurt. That hurt because the store also gave me buying power. He would never give me that. So he said, I said, you know what, you need to let me choose the records because instead you would say, he would give me a stack of records. He said, tell me what to order. I would listen to all the records, say, order this. How many you think of that? So 5 of that, just 2 of that, because I'm not sure that's going to work. One of this and that. So after a couple of times, I said, why don't you just give me the sheet and I'll do it. He's like, no, I got this. Like, I felt it was almost racist. It's like, you know what? I'm your good old boy because I'm making a lot of money, but not good enough for you to say, here, you can order it. So I left and went to the store and I became that. And Right was on the beginning of house. So I was on the phone. Hey, Byron, who used to work in Barney's in Chicago. He wasn't, 10 City wasn't out. Hey, I'm looking for this record saying it's okay. He said, yeah, I know. I think I got 13 of them left. I said, do me a favor. Send me those 13. And if you know the guy, I need 25 more. He said, I got you, Tom. How's it going? How's it going in Baltimore? I said, yeah. It's it's catching on. So when Byron went to 10 City and I went to Basin Boys, we was just calling each other. It's like, can you believe this? We record store guys that now are making records. I was like, yeah, Byron, congratulations on Devotion, man. He said, no, congratulations on Alternate Tape. I'm like, dude, I'm on Warner Brothers and you're on Warner Brothers, his original projects, besides the imports. So anyway, that propelled me to becoming a record buyer. And I couldn't have done it without Bernie teaching me to understand, the importers. Because why he didn't want me to see that, because I could see distributors. And if I could see distributors, I could one day leave and put them out of business because now I got the knack and I got the distributors. But when he did that, I was so mad. I was like, you know what? I'm going to show you to a point where you're out of business. So when I left, he had 5 stores. By the time I finished with him, he only had 1. And I had 5 stores. And he never once said, I wish you hadn't never left or nothing. I was like, no. Because you know why? Because what I don't have, I send them to you. Hey, do you have this record? Like, no, I don't. But if you go down the hall, the guy, if it's a white guy, just tell him the record. He can order it for you. And the owner of the store I worked was from. I said, why you do that? And I said, because guess what? He could get it to them right now. We making enough money. It's like, you know what? We need a variety in the store. So he always respected me. So after I had to leave the Metro Stereo for Basin Boys, we became so, we had 5 deals. I couldn't work in a record store anymore. Not working 5, 6 in the morning and then work 8 hours in a record store. So we just all 3 decided we're gonna leave our jobs. It's like, okay, I'm gonna let go of this one thing that I love. But we said, okay, we're gonna pay ourselves. We're gonna put ourselves on salary, and we won't miss the money part of it. We'll just make it by enough to develop all these record deals. I was like, okay. And I left Metro Stereo, and I went to 12-inch dance records to work just part time. Like I had to have vital, but I wasn't doing it full time. I wasn't ordering. I wasn't doing anything. To this day, when I finally when me and the Basin Boys broke up and I was on this venture with education, a whole bunch of stuff. I said I went in Bernie's store just to buy listen what was going on. And a buddy of mine said, won't you hire him back? And I never had to ask him. And he said, sure, tell him he can start Monday. And I went back to Music Liberated. This was almost 10, 6, 7 years later. No regrets, and we was a great team together. We have pushed Baltimore club music that became a phenomenon, and all kinds of stuff. And I learned that, you know what, don't burn the bridges. So, and I was with him until he died in a car accident. And it's like, wow, it was like burying my father. It was like, it's like, I went to the funeral and I ain't never been to a Jewish funeral, but, and I didn't care what they thought. It's like, this guy shaped my life. You know what I mean? He might have had his ways about him, but so does most of America. How can I blame him? So that's how the record store. That's how the many, many stories of record stores. And it's when you just me and the audience out there, if you can look back and you see what God has done in your path, I can't take none of the credit for it. It's like I'm telling you a movie that I lived, and every step was aiming like this. It was going in a direction. So for me, it's very easy as long as I'm paying attention. So I'm saying to you out there, if there's a story that's right there in front of you, and if you don't see it, it's because you're not paying attention.
So well said. I want to go back to the record stores.
Go
Um,
ahead.
record stores were not just about selling records at that point in time.
No.
Were also a social node, a way to catch up on flavor, a way to see your friends, a community of like-minded people. Talk about the notion of a record store being more than just about selling records.
I never saw that part. The part you just, I never saw a socialized because uh, record stores that I was in didn't have room for that. You know what I mean? They would put you out if you wasn't buying records. They just to come in and listen. They would make exceptions to somebody that maybe in between pay weeks. But if you just walked in and just said, "I'm going to hang around," they would put you out. But what it was it was it didn't just sell records. It sold mixers. It sold headphones. It sold Stanton needles and all kinds of orthons and all the things it took for you to be a DJ. So I could have a novice come in and say, "I don't know where to begin." I said, "How much you got?" This is where you begin at, and set them up with the equipment. I don't, but records was also did other things. It set up beepers. It set up a whole bunch of things that African Americans didn't have nowhere to go get that kind of stuff. So you could come in with poor credit and get a beeper. You know what I mean? Which gave you the newest technology. Things on it. So besides selling records, the more people I bought in selling records, the more they were selling them beepers. The more they would sell and stuff like that because they would. So I'm watching their counters fill up, and I'm watching people buying snatching records about a dozen. Where by the end of the day, half my racks are empty on the weekends. But it was a way. I mean, some of the greatest artists I ever met was in a record store. So at a certain point, I had promoters bring down. So it was nothing for Run DMC to stop past Metro Stereo. And they in town. The promoter will bring in there. Hey Tom, I'm bringing Run DMC up there. What time is it? 3 o'clock. Okay, all right. I said, don't tell nobody. We just gonna show up. I said, fine. And then I said, he come in. My store's packed, and I said, something. He said, hey, you want to? Why don't y'all go over there and introduce yourself to Run DMC or Cash Money or Vesta Williams or whatever. What I mean? Record stores was that place where you could be with the people you idolized because the promoters felt like you need this extra thing. You know what I mean? We want to take you there. Come on, Mantronics. I'm taking you up to Metro Stereo. The store's gonna be packed. It's a lot of people know your music. They're gonna love you, and it's fine. And not just in hip hop or not too much in house, but definitely in other genres. So the record store was the first time I found power. Power. I became a Billboard reporter, and I was like, wow. And I was telling Billboard, well, hey, here's what I'm selling. I don't know what you're selling, but I'm selling 250 units I sold last week. And it's like, really? Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, it's because you only sell that. So that being a Billboard reporter just gave me more and more power. Like, wow, 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 wow. So in that way, yes, it's way more than just selling records. So example is Spen was 15 coming in the record store, and him and his guys wrote this record called "Girl, You Know It's True," and they sung it. But at the same time, they doing this record, the first record me and Spen did together. This record got picked up by a group in London, and all of a sudden, these hip hop guys had a #1 global record called "Girl, You Know It's True" by Milli Vanilli. All right, I'm like, what?
Wait.
I'm sitting there watching this happen.
Wait, say that again. This is Spen?
Yes. So him and his group wrote "Girl, You Know It's True" by Milli Vanilli.
What?
Yes. So this guy just did Get the Whole With and just killing Chicago and the world. At the same time, he says, "Shh, you can't put my name on it because we just signed a deal with Milli Vanilli, and I think we're gonna go that direction." It's like, I don't care, whatever. I'm happy for you. I don't care. I'm watching this stuff happen around me, and that's in a record store. In a record store, I'm just sitting in there. I'm just, hey, I would call Schoolie D up and say, I don't know if you know these names, but it's hip hop stuff because
I do. I'm from the BX, so I know all about that. Yeah.
so I was early hip hop. I was pro hip hop when it was true, an original creation. And I would call him up and he said, "Hey, Tom, what's up?" I said, "Yo, I need some more PSK." It's like, "Yo, well, I think I got 50 in my trunk." I say, "Don't sell them." "Do I have to come get them?" He said, No, I'll put them in the mail for you." I said, "All right, cool." And that taught me how that the music world, we could be distance apart, but we really together. So that happened with Schoolie D, Master P, and anyway, I would just look at the record, say, "Hey, go phone number. We call this number." The power of music in a record store. When I became a buyer, all of a sudden I'm talking to, I would have never met Byron before he was in Tennessee. I would have never met so many other people that to this day we're longtime friends. And they said, "I can't believe we're still doing this." And you especially don't. Like, yeah, but that's the power of music. And the record store is, wow. I watched artists that I miss. They died. You know what I mean? It's just, but I cherish the moments that I know I miss Tony, or I knew Herman, or some other people that just died too soon. But I could sit and cry about it, but I could also just think about it. I was lucky to be around, to know them, to know them, and guide them along their way, and they influenced my life. So yeah, the record store was a lifestyle. And when we decided to leave it, I was really reluctant about it. It's like, yeah, my whole life is that. You know what I mean? I'm in the record store. Oh man, my wife had my hair grow all the way down my back. And I would have it straight and sling it around like I'm one of goddamn DeBarge. Or whatever. But in music, I could be that creative. And nobody said a thing. It's like, you know what? He's an artist, what I mean? And for the first time, I found an expression that I didn't have to copy or imitate other African Americans. I could be me. I could be equal to Prince or James or Rick or Sly or many, many more. So, once I got past this thing, it said, "Well, everybody's saying you're gay." It's like they say anything that doesn't look like them, they say it's gay. So you get over it. And once I got past that and realized that more people was looking for something different, not everybody wants to copy each other. Some people are wise enough to know that it can either be pretty boring with all of us being a color, blue, or we could enjoy the rainbow that life is. So I started meeting more and more producers and and more people in music business, and meeting Virgil Sims, the sleeping bags, and sitting in Thommy Mottola office, and like, these things only happen in music, and it didn't happen because I was trying to be blue like the rest of the people in Baltimore. Because I was purple, I was sitting in front of Thommy Mottola.
You have no idea how many people love this scene, and no one really interviews us or talks about us. So it's just it's 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 conversations that need to be had.
Well, I'm glad you think it's a value, because to me, I, most of the knowledge I've learned about the business I've got from watching lost footage like this. I'll sit and listen to James talk. Yeah, the one to see what it is this for the two is see this. It's got to go like this, and I'm listening to him saying, so that's how that the footage was more valuable than reading it in an article. You know what I mean? Just watching them, or 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 having listening to Prince, knowing that I was in a record store and I had this album come in. And I said, "Who is this guy with this perm on this white horse?" Just that alone intrigued me. It was like, "What the heck is it?"
Mm.
And
Mhm.
second dancer, and I just didn't let them see the cover. I just played it. And they said, "What are you playing?" I said, "This guy called Prince." Had I just let them look at the cover, Baltimore was very close-minded. But I just let the music do the talking. And then they said, "Yo, they ain't got no clothes on." Same thing with Band 86. It's like, except for they was ready for it. It's like, what? What is that record you playing? Just saying Nasty Girl. Who want to make a record called Nasty Girl? I would say, these girls. And they say, oh, Nasty Girl. But guess what? They from the guy that you said that naked and had no clothes on. Like, oh! And that is one of the most fun, favorable thing I could do in a country town. You know what I mean? To say, listen, there's a whole world out here does not, in Baltimore, people think the whole world is like Baltimore. They really never step outside of Baltimore. So here I am introducing them to a vast amount of music and information and lifestyle. I know history and I can talk about them. And they come through the store and they sign autographs, and all of a sudden this whole new sound, Baltimore club and other house music DJs, all of a sudden, um, I'm sorry, I don't want to start getting mushy. That's all right. But one of the greatest things to me is to watch all these people when everybody was telling me I couldn't do this. Like, this nobody want to hear that junk. And now I'm watching all of them grown men to make success stories just far beyond what I could imagine. I am so honored to say, you know what? I did that. I helped that, and I did that. I helped that. I sat there and believed in it when everybody else was going to school and military, and I said, "No, I'm gonna do this." And everybody said, "You ain't never gonna make no money, yo. You just a waste of time." And I just said, "I gotta do this." And now to see that it was worth it. When I walked through the Grammy carpet, I was like, "This is worth it." You know what I mean? Dude, people just gave up and they believed that we all need to be square and a fit in a square peg. And I say, no, I'm a triangle. Sorry. But I never talk about it to this day, so I apologize. But for a long time, people try to make it seem like something was wrong. It's like, nah, I just loved it. And it's like you wasting your time. I'm like, nah. Now they're not saying that no more. They're not saying it no more. So man, I didn't want that to happen. Sorry, man.
It's all good, man. No apologies.
Yo, and and I buried so many friends, man. The hardest thing was to get through HIV. I just thought, man, I think I must have I had to go get counseling because I got so tired of burying, what I mean, people and burying people in the music industry. And I'm just like, I'm never gonna recover. I'm just never gonna recover from the loss of so many people. And I think was I still in the record store when I first started dying off? It was hard, and I had to listen to the people saying, "Well, that's what they deserve." It's like, really, does anybody deserve something like that? I was like, you know what, you're gonna feel a loss because you know what, these people were genius, and that was really hard. I had to recoup and get myself together because I watched the whole club scene die. Just where it used to be a packed club was only shadows of what was left. And I just knew music was done. We're done. We're done. Because these people made house music. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Their persistence on this sound that they they made a whole nother genre, and now they're dying by handfuls. My phone don't stop ringing. So, so and so died, so and so died, and it seemed like nobody had any remorse of what the great loss they was. But you know what? That people are dying. People, like Patrick Cowley and so many people that were way ahead of their time. It's like y'all do not understand. And I guess they do now because we see we're in this rut. We're in this rut that we allowed to happen. We didn't allow to happen because we lost so many talented people. And so that's why I get on the stage and I said, you know what? I remember that I would be the less. Y'all pointed at me saying, yo, you're a weirdo. I said, compared to where I came from, I am a preacher compared to where they was. You know what I mean? I said, you know what? Their freedom to express music and express the art is what made house music. It's like, you know what, y'all don't know it, you don't want to say it, you want to act like it was invented by somebody else, but you know what, it was all imitation of an underground sound that the gay clubs loved and would not let go of. You know what I mean? Thanks to the David Todds and the T. Scotts and the people that were the early predecessors that stuck on this sound, and you would not have my house if it wasn't for them constantly banging you in the head with Nona Hendrix and uh Patti LaBelle. You know what I mean? Y'all, the gay culture made messing with my mind, and music is my life and stuff like that. They made these records so you know them and you know it. You didn't have to be in a club and so much more. And I thought I was just gonna wither away. It's like, you know what? And then I had this conversation with myself. I said, dude, they they alive. They in you. You know what I mean? So you make it your job that you don't let them go forgotten. And so I do it in music. I do it in me. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, ladies and gentlemen, it's Thommy Davis. It's like, what? You y'all ain't gotta like me because you know what? One day you're gonna appreciate my difference. Just like I appreciate them. I'm getting preachy, man. I'm sorry.
No, this is real. It's real. Thank you for keeping it 100.
Yeah. I just woo. It was hard. Them 80s was hard. It's like, wow. Wow. I watched, when David Todd died, I was just like, wow, he's a genius. And T. Scott died, and I was like, oh my gosh, man, everything, these are, then when David Cole died, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. Just bury me somewhere. You know what I mean? These guys changed the sound for everyone. You know what I mean? There would be, when CNC Music did Sweat and all those other kind of records, they made it so it was Basement Boys, it was CNC Music Factory in Inner City, and we was changing the world. You know what I mean? Opening the world's eyes to, like, you know what? It doesn't have to be the same. So when he died, and I knew him personally, I just was so crushed. It was like, dang, what the hell happened? And many, many more. And we always gonna feel that loss. But I said, you know what? As long as you're alive, you can talk about it. You can talk about. I learned stuff from David. Just listening. Even still, if I play some David Cole records, I learned. I just listened and said, dude, you was way ahead of your time. You know, I wish I could find T. Scott tapes. Tony Humphries came from T. Scott.
Explain that. Explain that for people.
Well, I wish I could prove facts. I'm just when I talk to other people that was around, I was 17, so I couldn't actually go through the T. Scott movement. You know what I mean? I met him and I talked to him and loved him as a DJ. But according, he was the first guy in the Zanzibar. So T was the guy in the Zanzibar. And when T started getting sick, the Tony was around. And Tony took over. And the rest we already know. But very few people know that T was the one of the godfathers of this sound. of who Tommy Davis and Basin Boy is. This really comes from T. But they're never going to do that. They're not going to go back and realize that, it took David Todd and T. Scott and Ron Hardy and many, many more that, that were the ones that was triangles in a square world. and and unfortunately with house people, they don't want to ever associate the roots of house. So they only go back as far as they're comfortable. It's like, okay, you want to go back and you want to think it's Frankie, but Frankie came from New York, that he was going to the garage with Timmy. And the garage, it was a multicultural thing. But people only want to remember as he invented house. It's like, how can you say he invented a house but not realize where he came from? I got in big arguments in New York about it. Stood up in a panel and said, I mean, it's not a good thing. Quick story. So Basin Boys, we would go to all the seminars. So the seminar that's now in Miami used to be in New York. So it's me and all the frontier house people. And we just showing up, not planned. It just happened to be in New York for this seminar. And there were panels where you would have, you know, people discussing Frankie, Farley, Jack Master Funk, and the likes on panels. And I was Mr. Guy in the record store with what I mean? I think Basin Boys had one or two records. So I was speaking from a record store person. And so Frankie said, "Oh yeah, I'm the godfather of the house." So I just waited. I went up there and said, "You're not the godfather of the house." And the whole room just said, "Dude!" Like they was, if they could have stoned me with their eyes, they would have. But I was speaking from a retailer. You know what I mean? I said, I've been selling a house for about like 5 or 6 years. And every time I hear you play, you don't play none of them. So how are you the godfather? If I go out here tonight, you're not gonna play none of them either. So I said, you're not the godfather. You definitely are a factor in house music, but you by no way are a godfather. And the whole room went just quiet. First they get loud. They said, I could hear him breathe. And this is before he was the warehouse Frankie. You know what I mean? The one that left New York to there. So I could feel the people saying, I said, but I gotta say this, man. He said, house back then, house was a redundant beat. And so it's and Frankie's always been melodic, you know what I mean? So this is before we had soulful house. You know what I mean? It was just guys on drum machines and loops and stuff like this. So we had Can You Feel It by Mr. Fingers. We had them kind of records. But Frankie was saying, I'm the godfather. I helped create this. It's like, no. I've been watching you for a while, bro. You ain't playing none of that. So how you the godfather? So everybody turned to me and said, yo, you wrong for that, yo. You wrong for that. I was like, yo, I work in a record store. So I know who's who. And I know who is the godfather. And it ain't that guy. And I knew Frankie, but I didn't know him personally. So later on, we up on this sky level, and I think we had a new bass boy record. I think it was Tonight. The junior basketball, the record that junior basketball busted up. And we was trying to get, so Ted, Teddy and Frank and Frankie was closer than me because I'm just gonna call it like it is. And he said, "Here, Frankie, I want you to have this record." Frankie took the record and threw it on the ground. And I was like, "You bitch." But not because he threw it on the ground, because it hurt my partner that looked up to you. You know what I mean? And one of the first time I said my big mouth kind of influenced something that I would never hurt my boy by, making his idol throw his record on the ground. And I felt so bad, you know what I mean? So it was one of the lessons where I learned that, unlike this damn interview, I wasn't saying my opinion much anymore. So, I mean, eventually, Frankie and I did we never came close, but we didn't hold that. You know what I mean? Because Frankie was from the culture, and I was like, bitch, I just fed you. You know, in his language. Because to me, I didn't feel like, you know, I felt like we all a part of this thing called house, and I have a right to an opinion. And from a retail point of view, the house could be even bigger if you would play it. And I just said it. Needless to say, I lost a lot of Chicago fans. Yeah, but that is one of the moments, and it was like 500 people in the room. You know, I had to walk down the aisle to get to a mic and stand in line to ask the question. So immediately, I think it was Farley and some other people on the panel with Frankie. And then, so as soon as I said that, so Farley said, hey, yo, let me ask you a question. Didn't you do that record, get the whole? I said, yeah, I did. He said, I heard you sold your 8-ball jacket to make that record. And it sounded like it. And the whole room went, they go, shots fired. But I knew why. You know what I mean? It's like, yo, okay, you know what? I took some shots at your boy, and you took some shots at me. They're like, all right, I ain't mad. I didn't want to fight. And I'm like, that it was just, it's to me, this is a seminar. It's where we get a chance to say what we want to say. But, yo, that was, you know, my voice is like, Tom, I can't believe, had we known you was going to go up there and say that, we would. And I was not putting Frankie down. I was just saying, you're self proclaiming yourself the godfather of the house. And you are the godfather of being the king of a new trend. But you, by no far, to me, godfather means you procured it. Years later, I did find out that years later, he took the Jamie Principle early cassette tapes in Chicago. So in that way, Jamie was one of the underground things of house. So maybe he considered what he did with Cold World and all these other records made him the godfather, using Jamie's work of saying Jamie did these records 5, 6, 7 years ago, and I'm redoing them 5, 6, 7 years. That means I'm the godfather because you know you made it big, major label. So I'm like, okay, but for real, you're not really the godfather. You know, because I knew Jesse Saunders, I knew Chip E, you know what I mean? I knew early JM Silk, you know what I mean? To me, yeah, they the godfathers, you know, because they were doing it before any young New York guys or anybody else. And I had a grudge against New York that would not play house at all. They just wouldn't play it. They just like, no, that's trash at one phase, you know, before when it was just in its original form. And I just took it as a grudge. I mean, not a grudge. It's like, you know what? Now that it's overseas and it's around the world, now all y'all want to be house. But I go in Vinyl Mania in the record stores, I don't see any house records on your shelf. You know what I mean? I'm like, Manny, where your house records? Oh, we don't have any. I'm talking Vinyl Mania, a whole bunch of different record stores that we used to go in New York. And New York is a unique place. There is its own self-contained culture. So I didn't blame them for it because I love New York's culture. You know what I mean? I loved it with just I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for New York's culture and what y'all did. But I couldn't understand why they wasn't open to this thing called house music. And I said it. And you know what? This interview is gonna kill me. It's gonna destroy me. It's gonna bring back don't.
It's not. It's not. It's not. It's just. It's long gone. It's just. It's a real conversation.
Yeah. You ever seen somebody that say who invented a house and how long they talk about it in a post? They fight like you stole somebody's toaster. Like really? Y'all fighting about who created the egg, the chicken, or the And it's important to them for some reason. Like, why is that so important? Why is it so important? Like, well, the first house record, we made it here. It's like, whatever. Okay. You know what? Most people saying it, they were not the people that's doing it. The real people are long forgotten. What I mean? Their work was real small, and they might have printed 300 copies, but that 300 copies of that record changed the scene. What I mean? To me, like Tyree Cooper and so many more, Mr. Lee, these guys was chugging this sound. Like, where y'all getting this sound from? And they just really it. It was like, wow. I wanted to move to Chicago. I thought about that. I should just move to Chicago. I love this. Couldn't figure it out, And to me, they don't get no respect. None at all. The even Detroit people. I mean, I was on Mayday long before Detroit people took it. I think I had every Model 500 and Juan Atkins and Mayday record there was, because they were geniuses. I was like, who does records like that? These guys were just masterful with it. And hey, it's just, I was ear to the ground. It's like, I'm like, you don't hear the difference. You can't hear what these guys are. You know what I mean? That of how Detroit and Chicago influence each other. You know what I mean? To say one didn't affect the other one is a dumb. It's like you can hear elements in both of them. I still will walk up to Mayday man and just say, dude, you're the truth. Because, still to this day, Strings of Life is just that monumental of a record. It's like, dude, I knew it then when you did it. You know what I mean? That was incredible. So, but how many times you hear people acknowledge it? You don't see the Grammys acknowledging it. You don't see nobody else saying, like, this guy has performed with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, his house record called Strings of Life. But here in the United States, y'all are silent. What's going on here? Anyway, okay, yeah, we can do it next thing. I just hope you're kind with your edit, please, please.
I'm gonna, to use the words of Birdman, I'm gonna put some respect on your name. All right.
But it's the only way I can tell you to be real is to have an open conversation. Don't think about curtailing it. Exactly. So I'm letting all of it out, and then after I do it, I'm regretting. It's like, damn, I shouldn't have said all that. But I'm trusting you. And hey, I might not wake up tomorrow. You'll have the last thing I said. Because life is so short.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your conversation. I appreciate you keeping it not 100, but 1,000. And yeah, we talk next week. All right, man. Have a good night.
All right. Good night, man.
Yeah.